Chapter 365. As for Zhou Shaoxian running away from home, although Zhou Xuanji felt guilty, he was more angry. This girl was too arrogant. He must learn from her mistakes. To find Zhou Shaoxian, he had spent a whole month searching. Fortunately, his cultivation was high and he could sense Zhou Xiaoxuan's bloodline when he was near. Or else, who knew how long he would have to search. He pretended not to know Zhou Shaoxian was here and wandered around the valley. Long Xiaoshui did not see any demons and heaved a sigh of relief. He wiped his sweat as he complained, "Big brother, are you stupid? Zhou Shaoxian can't be hiding here. She's Emperor Sword Court's genius. Even if she wanted to hide, she would be in a city. There's a city nearby. Let's go and take a look. We must hurry. If someone finds us and goes to Emperor Sword Court to claim credit, I will not be Zhou Xuanji's personal disciple." At this point, he became anxious like an ant on a hot pan. Zhou Shaoxian, who was hiding in the bushes, heard him and relaxed. It seemed like they were not enemies. They were her father's admirers. "Someone's here." Zhou Xuanji cried out suddenly. Next, he tossed out the book-cutter sword, which cut through the bushes and landed in front of Zhou Shaoxian. Her face turned pale. She quickly got up and said, "Don't do it. I have no ill intentions." Long Xiaoshui looked over and opened his eyes wide. His chubby face blushed immediately. It was Zhou Xuanji's first time seeing Zhou Shaoxian, and he was a little dazed. She really looked like Jiang Shui, but also a little different. This girl was pretty like her mother, but her eyes and brows were very similar to his. They were filled with fighting spirit. Zhou Shaoxian saw Zhou Xuanji too. She felt that she had seen this face before, but she could not remember where. When she was young, her mother showed her Zhou Xuanji's portrait, but she could not remember clearly after a long time. Usually, she would not want to see her father's portrait. Because she had heard too many stories about Zhou Xuanji, she began to rebel from the age of 6. She wanted to roam the world with her sword every day and shake the world when she was young. Such a pretty girl. Let's kill her and make a stew. Zhou Xuanji suddenly smiled evilly and licked his lips intentionally. Zhou Xiaoxuan's body tensed up when she heard that. Long Xiaoshui's eyes widened as he said in a trembling voice, "Big brother, what are you talking about? Thinking about the days he spent with Zhou Xuanji. If this guy really liked to eat people, f***ck. I'm in such a dangerous situation." Zhou Xuanji waved his right hand, and the book-cutter sword returned to his hand. He walked toward Zhou Shaoxian and chuckled, "Little girl, do you have any last words?" He was quite pleased with himself. He didn't expect Zhou Shaoxian to have already reached the 10th level of the foundation building realm. She was very close to the enlightening realm. This girl was only 13 years old, but she was already so talented. Sure enough, dragons gave birth to dragons and phoenixes gave birth to phoenixes. Zhou Shaoxian unsheathed her sword and assumed the stance of the vibrant raindrop sword. "You man-eating demon, do you really think I'm a pushover?" After that, she entered sword will mode straightaway. Stomping on the ground with her right foot, her body spun as she charged toward Zhou Xuanji. Xiao! Xiao! Swoosh, the blade trembled, and countless sword flowers appeared. They looked like falling petals or a torrential downpour. The sword qi inundated Zhou Xuanji. Long Xiaoshui was dumbfounded. Such a cool sword technique. Compared to her, his Emperor's Way thousand-hand sword Buddha was like sh*t. Zhou Xuanji pretended to receive the attack with great difficulty. He gritted his teeth purposely, and cold sweat seeped out of his forehead. Zhou Xiaoxuan's aura grew more powerful, which caught him off guard. Finally, with a loud thump, Zhou Xuanji's book-cutter sword flew out of his hand. The tip of Zhou Xiaoxuan's sword was pressed against his throat. "You lost," she said with a cold face. Zhou Xuanji sighed and said, "You should kill me. I want to eat you." Zhou Shaoxian frowned and snorted, "You are trash. Even if you want to eat me, you can't." Zhou Xuanji almost vomited blood. This girl was too arrogant. And a poisonous tongue. Why was she so similar to Xian Xianghua? At this moment, Long Xiaoshui came over and said with a big smile, "My lady, we don't have any ill intentions. He's just joking with you. If he wanted to eat you, he would have eaten me long ago." Even though he said this, he was not confident in his heart. After spending a month with Zhou Xuanji, he felt that this guy was temperamental like a lunatic. Zhou Xiaoxian sheathed her sword and said, "You are looking for Zhou Xiaoxian?" Long Xiaoshui nodded. "You are Zhou Xiaoxian?" he asked with his eyes wide open and breathing rapidly. She was so young and had such exquisite sword techniques. She must be. He became excited immediately and said, rubbing his hands, "Follow me back to Emperor Sword Court and ask the Sword Emperor to take me as his disciple." The heavens did not disappoint those who worked hard. Zhou Xiaoxian sized him up and shook her head, saying, "Your talent is too poor. You can only be an odd job servant." Long Xiaoshui's smile froze immediately. "Moreover, my father disappeared for 13 years. I have not seen him since I was born." "Don't think about him anymore," Zhou Xiaoxian said with curled lips. Zhou Xiaoxian curled her lips. Speaking of this matter, she was filled with righteous indignation. She had not seen her father since she was young, so naturally, she was indignant. However, she did not object to Zhou Xuanji fighting Lu Wuji. If she were Zhou Xuanji, she would do the same. Just like Emperor Sword Court's motto, to support the world with the sword and save the world with the sword. But even though she was rational, she was still very sad without her father. Sometimes, even she could not understand her own complicated emotions. "Don't worry. The Sword Emperor is unparalleled in the world. He must be an isolated cultivation," Long Xiaoshui said with his hands on his waist. Seeing how he was acting like Zhou Xuanji's fanboy, Zhou Xiaoxian did not have any ill feelings toward him. Zhou Xuanji said, "You are not powerful enough. Instead of wandering around, why don't you go back and cultivate? There are so many sword techniques in Emperor Sword Court, enough for you to cultivate for a few thousand years." Zhou Xiaoxian stared at him and said, "What do you know?" "I'm going to search for the inheritance of the ancient sword emperors. My father obtained 2 inheritances. I want 3 too." Zhou Xuanji was furious. Why did this little girl have to fight with him for everything? "Jijage. I finally found you." A sinister laughter came. A strand of ghost chi descended from the sky and landed beside the 3 of them. It was Wanzong King Spectre. Zhou Xiaoshuan's face was pale. She only had one concealing grass. It was over. Long Xiaoshui was also shocked by Wanzong King Spectre's appearance. After the ghost chi dissipated, Wanzong King Spectre appeared. He glanced at Zhou Xuanji and Zhou Xiaoxian but did not care. "Hold on. He is..." Wanzong King Spectre opened his eyes wide as though he had seen a ghost. He was so frightened that he turned into a strand of ghost chi and flew away immediately. Ugh, Zhou Xiaoxian was stunned. He left just like that? She looked at Zhou Xuanji and Long Xiaoshui instinctively but did not see anything wrong. She looked around and thought that there were horrifying demons hiding in the dark. "Okay, I have to go. Bye." Zhou Xiaoxian waved her right hand and left on her sword. Long Xiaoshui wanted to chase after her but was stopped by Zhou Xuanji. After Zhou Xiaoxian left the valley, Zhou Xuanji waved his right hand and slashed out with the windcutter sword. Ah, a miserable cry came from the top of the mountain. Next, a silhouette fell down. It was the girl in the green dress who followed Zhou Xiaoxian. Chapter 366. The lady in green dress was stabbed in the abdomen by the windcutter sword. Blood gushed out along the blade. She climbed up from the ground and stared at Zhou Xuanji. "Who are you? You are so powerful, but you pretended to be weaker than that girl," she asked with gritted teeth. Zhou Xuanji used universal attraction, sucking her in front of him and gripping her throat. He stared into her eyes and coldly said, "Evildoer, don't think that I can't see through your true form just because you're in human form. Zhou Xiaoxian, what are you trying to do? Monster?" Long Xiaoshui shuddered. However, he was more curious about Zhou Xuanji's strength. Compared to before, he was like a completely different person. After interacting with Zhou Xuanji for a month, he still could not tell how powerful Zhou Xuanji was. It was as though no matter what demons they encountered, they could not even withstand a single blow from him. Could it be that the old evil devil was scared away by this guy? The green-dressed woman's expression changed. Even Wanzhong King's specter could not see through her true form, but Zhou Xuanji could do it with a glance, which made her shudder. "Speak or die," Zhou Xuanji said coldly. A horrifying murderous aura engulfed the lady in green, and she trembled in fear. The truth sword was drawn and pierced into her chest. She gritted her teeth and said, "I am Jihuang Demon Lord's daughter. I want revenge. I want to capture Zhou Xiaoxian and force Zhou Xuanji to come out." Her eyes widened and her face was filled with fear. Why did she tell the truth? Zhou Xuanji squinted his eyes. He did not expect Jihuang Demon Lord to have a daughter. That's right, as the sovereign of the demon race, he must have countless children. Zhou Xuanji suddenly sheathed his sword and smiled, "So that's how it is. You can leave then." The woman in green was stunned. She had already made up her mind to die, but she did not expect Zhou Xuanji to let her go. She immediately leaped up and fled quickly, afraid that Zhou Xuanji would change his mind. Long Xiaoshui panicked and said, "She's a demon, and she wants to kill Zhou Xiaoxian. How can we let her go?" Zhou Xuanji glanced at him and said, "You are going to chase after him?" Long Xiaoshui choked. Zhou Xuanji slowed down his tone and said, "Go to Great Zhou and find the hidden sword sex elder, Qiu Bailey. Ask him to recommend you to Emperor Sword Court." With a flip of his right hand, a token appeared in his hand. The token was black iron in color, and its top was formed by two crossed swords. The word Emperor was engraved between the blades. Emperor Sword Token. Long Xiaoshui was dumbfounded. He only came back to his senses after receiving the Emperor Sword Token. Zhou Xuanji brushed past him. He quickly asked, "Who the hell are you?" Zhou Xuanji glanced at him and smiled, "Using the sword to support the world, using the sword to save the world." After he spoke, Zhou Xuanji disappeared. Long Xiaoshui became excited. These words were the words of the Emperor Sword Court. Could it be that this fellow was a disciple of the Emperor Sword Court? It turned out that he was sent by Emperor Sword Court to protect Zhou Xiaoxian. Long Xiaoshui happily walked out of the valley, ready to find the hidden sword sect. After leaving the valley, Zhou Xuanji quickly tracked down Zhou Xiaoxian. He did not jump out immediately but followed her. He had purposely let the green-dressed woman go in order to create danger for Zhou Xiaoxian. He would only make a move when her life was in danger. Only then would she learn her lesson and not run away from home so easily in the future. At the same time, Zhou Xuanji wanted to tell her that traveling the world was very dangerous, especially when she was alone. He wanted her to understand the importance of power. Zhou Xuanji lay on the formless sword and traveled freely above the clouds. The spiritual qi in the world of the living was much fresher than in the netherworld, which made him feel more comfortable. "You are back indeed." A voice came into Zhou Xuanji's ears. He did not open his eyes, but he knew who it was. It was Dao Seeker. "Are you a dog?" He asked casually, "Your nose is so sensitive." "I just came back, and you are here." He still had some complaints about Dao Seeker. During the battle at the Hunyuan Royal City, Dao Seeker was watching the battle too. When he and Lu Wuji lost their ability to fight, this guy did not save him. Dao Seeker was wearing a Taoist robe. His expression was calm, just like 13 years ago. He stared at Zhou Xuanji and said, "I know you have complaints. As a tribulation executive, I can't do anything. This is not important. You have returned safely, and the catastrophe of the northern wilderness region has just begun. You are the top cultivator in the world, and your responsibilities have just begun. Zhou Xuanji opened one eye and asked, "What do you mean?" Lu Wuji just died, and someone else jumped out. Biyao. He felt depressed. Why were there so many things? People like Lu Wuji, Biyao, and Shishenzong could reign supreme in an era, and it was rare to see one in 10,000 years. But in his era, he encountered all of them at once. There was also heaven and the threat from overseas. Is heaven against me? The heavenly Xianyuan clan lost 2 geniuses, and they are furious at the northern wilderness region. They are preparing to send powerful cultivators from the upper realm down to enslave the northern wilderness region. Other than that, the descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline has already appeared. More accurately, he was born a long time ago, but his fate was only revealed recently. Dao Seeker sighed. He felt helpless too. The descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline? Zhou Xuanji heard about it from Jiang Wudi a long time ago. He asked with a frown, who is the descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline? At the same time, he was full of doubts about the heavenly Xianyuan clan. Could the upper realm bully the mortal realm so casually? Dao Seeker shook his head and said, "I'm not sure. No one knows, but you must be prepared. You are now the top cultivator in the world, and you have the greatest hope of becoming a great emperor. As long as you protect the northern wilderness region and kill all these powerful enemies, you will be recognized by the heavenly law and become a great emperor. When you ascend to the upper realm, your status will not be low. Becoming a great emperor." Zhou Xuanji squinted his eyes, and his mind became active. Dao Seeker did not speak anymore and let him think alone. After that, Dao Seeker turned around and dissipated into a puff of smoke. Zhou Xuanji got up with a flip and spat. "Great. Since I'm already the top cultivator in the world, don't think about kicking me down." After returning from the netherworld, he killed Lu Wuji easily, which boosted his confidence. He was not afraid of trouble. Zhou Shaoxian, who was below, stopped by the river and began drinking water. She sat by the river and drank a few mouthfuls of water. She did not get up but looked into the distance with a pout. She regretted leaving Skyfall for so long. She was still a child after all, and it was inevitable for her to miss home. Zhou Xuanji looked at her from the sky and could not help but recall the past. For the next period of time, the moon set and the sun rose. No matter where Zhou Shaoxian went, Zhou Xuanji followed her and did not show himself. In the palace of the Hunyuan Empire's royal palace, Yang Di sat on the throne with 9 little golden dragons by his feet. They were all sleeping soundly, and their nostrils and mouths were breathing out scorching air. He had already absorbed the dragon vein, and his cultivation had reached an unprecedented level. The fate of countless people in the Hunyuan Empire was gathered on him, which was unprecedented. He looked up at the palace and saw the man in the woven rush raincoat standing before him. "What's your ambition?" "You got the dragon vein and absorbed it completely to transform it into your magic energy, while the people of the Hunyuan Empire will face a catastrophe." "You lied to them," the man in the woven rush raincoat said with a deep voice. He could not hide the anger in his tone. He chose Yang Di. But Yang Di went against their initial agreement. Someone said that he must not let Long Xiaoshui marry Zhou Shaoxian. This was a strange point of view. How could he tell that they were going to be together? He was neither handsome nor vulgar. Unless he was the main character, how could he win against the proud lady? Ha ha ha. Mobile version of the fastest updated website, M. Chapter 367. Sunlight Emperor stared at the man in the woven rush raincoat indifferently and said, "You wanted me to become the strongest in the world, and I did it. You wanted me to create the great Fate Empire, and I am working hard. You wanted me to guard the future of the human race, and I am waiting. You're talking nonsense. Do you think this is easy? Why can't this emperor pursue power?" His majestic voice echoed throughout the hall, like a god interrogating mortals. The man in the raincoat gritted his teeth and said, I told you to guard the future of the human race, including protecting every mortal who isn't a great villain. The corners of Sunlight Emperor's mouth rose. He shook his head and laughed, saying, You are so naive. There is no perfect method in the world. How many lifetimes have you lived for your great ambition? How many deaths have you seen? The man in the straw raincoat was so angry that his entire body was trembling. This brat had completely betrayed them. He was filled with regret. If he had known this would happen, he would have chosen someone else from back then. Sunlight Emperor waved his hand and said, You should have retired and ascended long ago. You are powerless to stay in the human world. Why bother? The man in the raincoat snorted coldly, flicked his sleeves, and left. Looking at his back, Sunlight Emperor's expression became cold, with killing intent flashing in his eyes. How can you understand this emperor's ambition? Sunlight Emperor murmured to himself. His tone was full of disdain. In the blink of an eye, 2 months had passed. Zhou Xuanji followed Zhou Shaoxian across mountains and lakes. The girl encountered many demons, but with the vibrant raindrop sword, she overcame all obstacles, and her sword techniques became more and more powerful. But from the looks of it, it would take at least a few thousand years for her to find the legacy of the ancient emperor. Zhou Xuanji was a little frustrated. Why hadn't Jihuang Demon Lord's daughter acted? Running away from home this time made Zhou Shaoxian feel an unprecedented loneliness, but it also made her gradually stronger. On this day, she practiced her swordsmanship as she advanced. In front of her was a boundless grassland with no end in sight. With a bitter expression, she sighed and said, Sigh, when will I be able to find the inheritance of the ancient sword emperors? I really miss Mother's lotus seed soup. Being alone outside, everything she ate tasted tasteless. Her mouth was so bland that it was about to fall out of her mouth. The more she thought about it, the more upset she felt. But soon, she adjusted her mood and continued on her way. Zhou Xuanji, on the other hand, felt quite spirited. This was because there was a very powerful aura on the grassland. Beyond the Mahayana realm. Strange, how could there be such an expert near the southern snow kingdom? Are you all here to capture my daughter? Zhou Xuanji rubbed his chin and mumbled to himself. There were not many great tribulation scattered immortals in the world. Especially after Lu Wuji was born. That fellow had killed more than half of the human race's peak experts. Fortunately, Zhou Xuanji had also killed all of the demon race's peak experts, so the two races were still at peace. 100 miles away from Zhou Shaoxian, a man in a tattered armor was sitting cross-legged on the grass. There were 2 scars on his face, on both sides of his cheeks. His pupils were green, and he had no eyebrows. His hair was tied back with a string. His eyes were locked onto Zhou Shaoxian. The Sword Emperor's daughter is indeed blessed. He muttered to himself with a strange smile on his face. After a long while, Zhou Shaoxian finally saw him and subconsciously stopped. The armor on his body was broken, as if he had just gone through a fierce battle, causing people to feel apprehensive. Zhou Shaoxian frowned. After a moment of thought, she turned around and walked in another direction. At this moment, the armored man stood up, scaring her into drawing her sword. Zhou Xuanji's daughter? TSK. Such audacity to travel the world alone. Come with me. As long as you perform well, I can grant you power that surpasses your father. The armored man laughed softly as he walked toward Zhou Shaoxian. Who are you? Zhou Shaoxian asked with gritted teeth. Given how arrogant he was, he might not be an ordinary person. She was anxious. Without the concealing grass, who could protect her? I'm from overseas and have been in the northern wilderness region for 100 years. I've seen Zhou Xuanji rise to fame and shake the world. You are his daughter, and your talent is not inferior to his. Come with me, and I will take you as my disciple. In the future, you can ascend and even become an immortal. The armored man continued to speak with a passionate smile in his eyes. I can ascend with my father. Zhou Shaoxian said warily. Hearing this, the armored man laughed heartily into the sky. He laughed heartily. Your father? He's already dead. He fell into hell. How can he rise again? Even if he returns, he will be reincarnated. The 8 sanctums did not mention this. Do you know why? It's not to commemorate the Sword Emperor but to intimidate the demons and overseas factions. After all, he was the invincible person who killed Lu Wuji. Zhou Xiaoshuan's face turned pale. She had been waiting for her father's return. But sometimes, she would think to the extreme. Although she said that she wanted to surpass Zhou Xuanji, if Zhou Xuanji was not around, it would be meaningless even if she could surpass him. She recalled the scene of her mother crying quietly in the middle of the night. The more she thought about it, the more terrified she became. Sorrow welled up in her heart, and she felt as though the world was falling apart. The northern wilderness region is in its final phase. The world epoch is here, and a new overlord is about to appear. You will surely die if you stay in the northern wilderness region. Follow me. This is your serendipity. The armored man came up to Zhou Shaoxian and looked down at her. She was so frightened that she stumbled backward. Swoosh! An air-piercing sound came and landed between the two of them. It was the dog culling sword. The two turned around and saw Zhou Xuanji dashing toward them from the end of the grassy plain. It's him. Zhou Shaoxian opened her eyes wide. She did not expect that the loser would come to save her. Zhou Xuanji suppressed his aura to the great realization stage intentionally and came up to Zhou Shaoxian quickly. He raised his right hand, and the dog culling sword appeared in his hand. Little girl, are you afraid? Zhou Xuanji stared at the armored man and said with a deep voice. Zhou Shaoxian heard him and immediately raised her sword. I'm not afraid, she said softly. The armored man smiled disdainfully and said, Great realization. Powerful indeed. Seems like Emperor Sword Court already knows of her whereabouts. Zhou Xuanji used a sword, so he naturally thought of Emperor Sword Court. It's a pity that I'm a second tribulation scattered immortal. Do you want to die? The armored man laughed sinisterly, which shocked Zhou Shaoxian so much that her pupils contracted. Second tribulation scattered immortal. Other than Zhou Xuanji, no one else in Emperor Sword Court had reached the Great Tribulation scattered immortal stage. She smiled bitterly and mumbled, It's over. It's over. She was still one step away from the enlightening stage. How could she defeat the armored man? With his back facing her, Zhou Xuanji said, Do you regret it now? If you had cultivated in Emperor Sword Court and worked hard to become more powerful, you would not be in danger today. Your father didn't have a choice back then. He created Emperor Sword Court so that you could cultivate peacefully, but you didn't cherish it. If your father really died and you were captured, how sad would your mother be? You are her only relative in this world. Zhou Shaoxian felt ashamed of herself. Her body trembled as she held the sword in her hand tightly. The armored man raised his right hand, and a black halberd appeared in his hand. Isn't it a little too late to preach now? He laughed loudly. Mobile version of the fastest updated website, M. Chapter 368. The armored man slashed at Zhou Xuanji with his halberd. Zhou Xuanji blocked with his sword. He pretended to be defeated and was forced to retreat, which made Zhou Xiaoshuan's heart beat faster. Brat, it's your serendipity to die in my hands. The armored man laughed. He did not cast any spells or divine abilities but hacked at Zhou Xuanji with his halberd. Zhou Xuanji was caught off guard and was forced to retreat. Zhou Shaoxian gritted her teeth and charged at him with her sword. The armored man swung his halberd casually and sent Zhou Shaoxian flying away. Seeing that his daughter was vomiting blood, Zhou Xuanji's eyes turned cold. But he still pretended to be defeated. This was a good opportunity for Zhou Shaoxian to understand the dangers of the world and how weak she was. Clang! 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 Zhou Xuanji and the armored man began fighting fiercely. Both of them were locked in a fierce battle. He purposely used the 8-step sword lunge and charged at the armored man from different directions, as though he was giving it his all. But the armored man forced him back again and again. To make it more exciting, Zhou Xuanji forced out a mouthful of blood and spat it into the air. He looked dispirited like an arrow at the end of its flight. "Stop. I'll go with you." Zhou Xiaoxian opened her eyes wide and shouted. After that, she wiped the blood at the corner of her mouth and walked toward the armored man. She looked at Zhou Xuanji apologetically. If not for her, Zhou Xuanji would not have been so severely injured. She did not have the time to recall if she had met Zhou Xuanji in Emperor Sword Court. She was filled with unwillingness and guilt, which made her feel like the world had turned dark. If only she was powerful enough, if only she was as powerful as her father, if only she did not leave the mountain. Extreme regret made her eyes glow with purple light. She lowered her head, and no one noticed her abnormality. "Why are you leaving? You are not as good as your father in this aspect." Zhou Xuanji, whose face was covered in blood, shouted with gritted teeth. His eyes were filled with rage. "The world only knows about your father's talent and prowess. But do you know how he got to where he is today? He encountered too many enemies who were far more powerful than him. But to protect the people around him and to take revenge, he wandered between life and death time after time. He was never afraid. Lu Wuji has surpassed 8th tribulation scattered immortal, and your father is no match for him. However, for the northern wilderness region, for all of you, he will fight to the death. Don't be afraid of regret. You should turn your regret into fighting spirit. Hold the sword in your hand tightly and fight with me. Either we die, or he dies." If Zhou Xiaoxian really left with the armored man, she would be traumatized for the rest of her life. Of course, with Zhou Xuanji around, half of the armored man's body was already in the ground. Hearing this, Zhou Xiaoxuan's body swayed. She took a deep breath and tried to calm herself down. She suddenly raised her head and gritted her teeth. "You're right, I can't be a disgrace to my father." She grew up listening to her father's legendary stories, so she knew that Zhou Xuanji was telling the truth. With that thought, she raised her sword and rushed towards the armored man. Zhou Xuanji moved simultaneously. The father and daughter attacked the armored man together. To prevent Zhou Xiaoxian from being injured, Zhou Xuanji increased the power of his attacks. At the same time, he helped Zhou Xiaoxian defend against the armored man's magic energy. The two of them worked together and caught the armored man off guard. Soon, Zhou Xiaoxian managed to injure him. Zhou Xiaoxuan's sword gale was more ferocious. Not only did she know the vibrant raindrop sword, but she also knew the 8-step sword lunge. Just like Zhou Xuanji, she fought like a phantom, except that her speed and aura were far inferior. "What's going on?" The armored man opened his eyes wide. Waves of shock surged in his heart. He glanced at Zhou Xuanji instinctively. This bastard is pretending to be weak. He was furious. He shook his arms, and a horrifying aura exploded, sending Zhou Xiaoxian flying away. Zhou Xuanji quickly caught her in his arms. The grass swayed, and a visible wave of energy transformed into a long pillar that soared into the sky. "Worm! You dare to make fun of me? You're courting death." The armored man roared furiously. He raised his halberd high, and the blade glowed with a black radiance, which gathered the thunderclouds. Zhou Xiaoxian opened her eyes wide in shock. It was her first time feeling the aura of a great tribulation scattered immortal. So powerful. She felt like she was facing a god. He was only a second tribulation scattered immortal. How horrifying was the Lu Wuji that her father was facing. Cold sweat trickled down her forehead. Zhou Xuanji held her up and said with a bitter smile, "My lady, it seems like we are going to die here." Zhou Xiaoxian bit her lip and got up with her sword. Zhou Xuanji noticed her pupils and frowned. Her pupils turned purple. Looking closely, there was a purple Tai Chi diagram in each of her pupils. How can it be? He was stunned. The purple Tai Chi diagram was the symbol of world reincarnation. How could this girl know it? Could it be the violet demon monarch's heart? Before he could think, the armored man slashed at him with his halberd. A horrifying saber chi tore through the ground like a roaring dragon. A violent gale blew, intending to sweep Zhou Xuanji and Zhou Shaoxian away. Facing such an attack, Zhou Xuanji sighed softly. It seemed like he could not put on a show anymore. Boom! A ball of flames descended from the sky and hit the armored man, burning him into ashes immediately. The waves of flames swept in all directions. Zhou Xuanji quickly carried Zhou Shaoxian and flew far away. After the two landed, they looked up and saw many fireballs in the sky. They streaked across the clouds toward the horizon. Each fireball left a long trail of smoke behind them, like a meteor shower. What's that? Zhou Shaoxian asked in astonishment with her eyes wide open. The arrogant armored man died just like that? Zhou Xuanji frowned tightly. He sensed many powerful auras. Within those fireballs were people. Each of them had surpassed the great realization stage. So many great tribulation scattered immortals, heavenly Xianyuan clan. The upper realm was going to enslave the northern wilderness region. TSK. I didn't expect to encounter a second tribulation scattered immortal right after I descended. Interesting. A mocking laughter came from the wave of flames. The two turned around and saw a silhouette rising from the wave of flames. He wore an exquisite and heavy golden armor with a red cape on his back. His face was handsome and domineering, and he wore a golden cow-horn crown on his head. In his hand was an extremely exaggerated halberd. He stared at Zhou Xuanji and Zhou Shaoxian and said with interest, "Your fates are so unpredictable. I will kill you first to prevent any unexpected changes." After that, he flew toward Zhou Xuanji and Zhou Shaoxian with his halberd. This person killed a second tribulation scattered immortal instantly. Zhou Shaoxian swallowed her saliva out of fear. What would my father do in such a situation? She asked softly. Zhou Xuanji sighed. If it were before, he would surely flee. She frowned and turned to look at Zhou Xuanji furiously. What about now? This guy made her father sound so brave and fearless. Why did he change his words now? Zhou Xuanji took a step forward and stared at the armored man. He has a daughter, so he must fight, of course. His voice was soft but firm. Numerous legendary swords appeared above his head. Each of them was emanating a unique aura and radiance, which illuminated Zhou Xiaoshuan's pretty face. He let go of the dog-culling sword, and the heavenly retribution martial punishment sword and true Lord Xiansheng's sword appeared in his hands. With both swords in hand, he no longer concealed his aura. His sword qi soared into the sky like a legendary sword. This is, Zhou Shaoxian opened her eyes wide. She fell into a daze and let go of her sword instinctively. Mobile version of the fastest updated website, M. Chapter 369. Fourth tribulation scattered immortal. Impressive. The golden armored man sneered. He still did not take Zhou Xuanji seriously. He continued to fly toward Zhou Xuanji and Zhou Xuanji. Suddenly, he stopped and said in astonishment, "So many swords and such cultivation. Could you be the sword emperor Zhou Xuanji?" Zhou Shaoxian looked at Zhou Xuanji's back blankly. Her white clothes fluttered in the strong wind. "Father," she mumbled. The blood on Zhou Xuanji's body receded at a speed visible to the naked eye. His face was as smooth as jade, and he smiled as he said, "Heavenly Xianyuan clan, right? Do you really think that the northern wilderness region is something that you can do whatever you want?" It was his first time acting cool in front of his daughter. It was so exciting. This battle must be clean, handsome, domineering, and majestic. "Zhou Xuanji, you are on my clan's kill list. Remember, the person who killed you is Xianyuan Huangchen." The golden-armored man became excited immediately. He charged toward Zhou Xuanji with his halberd. Zhou Xuanji was even faster. He activated the Emperor's Way Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha straightaway. A majestic golden Buddha rose from the ground, illuminating the land with a divine golden radiance. He merged into the thousand-hand sword Buddha's body, and 1,000 golden arms grew out from his back. Clang! The halberd struck the thousand-hand sword Buddha but did not cause any damage. Zhou Shaoxian raised her head and clasped her hands before her chest. Her mouth was wide open, and she looked shocked. She had seen the Emperor's Way Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha at Skyfall, but she had never seen such a majestic one. It was like a saint Buddha descending from the heavens, unreachable and sacred. So powerful, her eyes were beaming with excitement. So this was her father's power. At the same time, she was ashamed and angry. Zhou Xuanji must have been following her since 2 months ago. Didn't he see all her embarrassment and fear along the way? But she felt even more blissful in her heart. Her mother did not lie to her. If her father was here, he would surely dote on her. "Shaoxian, watch carefully. I will teach you when we get back." Zhou Xuanji's arrogant laughter came. He did not take Xianyuan Huangchen seriously at all. The thousand-hand sword Buddha attacked. 1,000 swords merged into one, and the attack was extremely fast. Xianyuan Huangchen was shocked. He could not dodge in time and was slashed into the ground. Boom! The earth shattered, and dust flew everywhere, covering the sky. Zhou Shaoxian screamed as she was sent flying by the violent tremors on the ground. Fortunately, a huge golden hand caught her. The golden hand placed her on the head of the thousand-hand sword Buddha. She was pleasantly surprised. Looking down from here, everything seemed so small. The thousand-hand sword Buddha opened its eyes and shouted, "Chaos!" Even Zhou Xiaoshuan's blood began to boil when she heard the roar that shook the heavens and earth. Streaks of sword shadows appeared out of thin air around the thousand-hand sword Buddha. There were so many of them that her eyes widened in shock. Great Chaos Sword Shadow! Zhou Xuanji rarely used this sword technique. Although it had great destructive power, it was not suitable for one-on-one battles. Today, in order to let his daughter see how strong he was, he naturally had to choose a gorgeous and domineering sword technique. In an instant, millions of sword images floated in the air. Each sword image was 30 meters long and looked like Zhou Xuanji's legendary swords. This move used up all of his magic power. Fortunately, he had the Tianxia map. What kind of sword technique is this? Zhou Xiaoshuan's face was red with excitement. She looked around and decided that she must learn this sword technique. The ground was covered by a dust storm. Xianyuan Huangchen leaped up. His face was covered with blood, and his chest almost exploded from anger. "Zhou Xuanji! Don't be so arrogant!" He roared furiously and swung his halberd quickly. A violent gale blew and turned into a gigantic wind dragon that coiled around his body. At first glance, this wind dragon was no smaller than the thousand-hand sword Buddha. The two of them confronted each other like two giant mountains. Far away, a group of cultivators stood on the peak of a mountain. All of them were stunned. They were disciples of a sect who went out to train. They did not expect to witness a huge battle in the distance. Emperor's Way Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha. It's the Sword Emperor. The Sword Emperor. Ha ha ha, I told you that the Sword Emperor is not dead. Such a domineering Sword Buddha. Who's the other person? Such a powerful aura. Could it be Yang Di? Too powerful. Are they immortal gods? These cultivators discussed excitedly. They did not expect to encounter such a huge battle during their training. Even though they were just spectators, it broadened their horizons greatly. Zhou Xuanji controlled the primordial chaos sword shadow with his mind. The sword shadow was like a downpour of rain, like the toppling of mountains and rivers. Its aura could break the heavens and was unstoppable. Xianyuan Huangshan controlled the wind dragon to attack as well. Boom, the two horrifying energies clashed together. The dust on the grassy plain dispersed, and the mountains far away shook. Thunderclouds billowed. Zhou Xuanji had two intimidating spirit legendary swords in his hands. His power was definitely not that of a fourth tribulation scattered immortal. The wind dragon was penetrated by the sword's shadow and dispersed in a short while. Xianyuan Huangshan held his halberd with both hands and spun it to block the sword's shadow. Even if he could block it, he was forced back continuously. This guy is so powerful. No wonder he could defeat Shishenzong. Xianyuan Huangshan thought to himself with gritted teeth. His eyes were filled with murderous aura. How could he lose to Zhou Xuanji when he just descended into the mortal realm? He cried out furiously and swung his halberd ferociously. Countless wind dragons appeared and charged toward the thousand-hand sword Buddha with a roar. Zhou Xuanji decided to end the battle quickly without any delay. The thousand-hand sword Buddha disappeared into thin air. Zhou Shaoxian shrieked and fell down. Zhou Xuanji wrapped his left arm around her waist and held True Lord Xianxing's sword in his right hand. He conjured the sky-dominating divine sword soul. Zhou Shaoxian looked up at him. His handsome and confident face gave her a sense of security that she had never felt before. She could not help but praise him in her heart. So handsome. No wonder her mother often said that her father was the most handsome man in the world. She did not believe it before, but now she did. My good daughter, look closely. Let me show you how your father kills the enemy. Zhou Xuanji said with a heroic smile. After he spoke, he came up to Xianyuan Huangshan with the 8-step sword lunge. Zhou Shaoxian felt her vision blur, and Xianyuan Huangshan appeared before her. His face was so hideous, as though he was possessed by a malicious spirit. At this moment, a black beam of light flashed before her eyes. Boom, a powerful light burst forth. She did not feel any wind or waves, but she could hear an incessant rumble. When the powerful light dissipated, Xianyuan Huangshan was nowhere to be seen. The 3 golden storage rings landed on True Lord Xianxing's sword's blade but did not fall off. A 5th tribulation scattered immortal is powerful indeed. But it's a pity that you picked the wrong opponent. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and smiled, which made Zhou Shaoxian admire him. She did not even see how Zhou Xuanji attacked, and the enemy was already dead. Moreover, the enemy was a 5th tribulation scattered immortal. With such cultivation, he was qualified to be the top cultivator in the world. She suddenly thought of the lady in green and snorted coldly in her heart, my father is still the most powerful. You are just a frog at the bottom of a well. She believed that if the lady in green witnessed this battle, she would not make such wild claims. Her father was the top cultivator in the world. Come. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 370. Zhou Xuanji left the battlefield quickly with Zhou Shaoxian, but the spectators did not leave. They were shocked and could not calm down for a long time. Half an hour later, the father and daughter landed beside a river. Zhou Xuanji put down Zhou Shaoxian and stretched his waist. How is it? Do you still dare to run away from home? He asked with a smile. Zhou Shaoxian heard him and blushed. She turned her head and snorted, if I don't run away from home, can I force you out? Although she was pleasantly surprised by Zhou Xuanji's appearance, she did not hug him directly. After the battle, her mood became complicated. Since she was born, she had never seen Zhou Xuanji. The unexpected meeting made her a little awkward. She did not know how she should face him. The more she thought about it, the more tears welled up in her eyes. She had an urge to cry. Zhou Xuanji saw this and sat down with his legs crossed. How about I tell you a story? He asked with a smile. Zhou Shaoxian heard him and sat down beside him. Tell me. She snorted. Her mother often mentioned that Zhou Xuanji would tell her stories to comfort her when they were young. A long time ago, the immortals lived in the heavenly court. The ruler of the heavenly court was the Jade Emperor. He was the leader of all gods, the ruler of all gods. His daughter, the third Saint Mother, suddenly became interested in the mortal realm, so she descended to the mortal realm. Zhou Xuanji began to tell the story with a sorrowful expression. The third Saint Mother was bewitched by a mortal and gave birth to her unfilial son, Lu Chenxiang. The Jade Emperor was heartbroken when he found out about this and wanted to summon the third Saint Mother back. But the third Saint Mother did not listen and resisted. Her brother, Yang Jian, was so furious that he came to capture her personally. But that mortal was vicious and killed himself straight away. Before he died, he entrusted his will to his son, Lu Chenxiang, to take revenge for him. This caused the Jade Emperor's family to fall apart. After that, the Yang clan suppressed the third Saint Mother under Mount Hua. After Lu Chenxiang grew up, he received the inheritance of the great sage, Heaven's Equal, who was a powerhouse of the demon race. He led the demons to attack the heavenly court, causing chaos in the heavenly court. The heavenly court suppressed Lu Chenxiang with their resources. Yang Jian couldn't bear to see his nephew die, so he purposely lost to Lu Chenxiang and let him escape. In the end, the gods took out their anger on him. From then on, Yang Jian was no longer the war god of the heavenly court and rarely returned to the heavenly court. The Jade Emperor also gradually became less and less worried. It wasn't until the great sage, Heaven's Equal, attacked the heavenly court that the father and son had a chance to reunite. At this point, Zhou Xuanji sighed faintly. No one knew if he was sighing for the Jade Emperor, Yang Jian, or the third goddess. In his heart, he apologized to the three holy mothers and Lu Chenxiang. It was all for the sake of educating his children. Zhou Xiaoxian clapped her hands and said indignantly, "So it was all the great sage's scheme." Zhou Xuanji almost fainted. This girl's way of thinking was really weird. He said helplessly, "This story is to tell you not to run away from home without telling your parents." Zhou Xiaoxian curled her lips in disdain. She crossed her arms in front of her chest and snorted, "Where have you been all these years? Some people say you're in hell, is that true?" Compared to the story, she was more interested in Zhou Xuanji's past. Ever since she was young, she had a competitive heart. The person in front of her did not look much older than her, but he was the most powerful man in the world. Zhou Xuanji shrugged and said with a smile, "Yeah, I fell into the netherworld." He told her about his experience in the netherworld. Although Zhou Xiaoxian was only 13 years old, she already had the ability to be independent. It was time to let her know how big the world was. Zhou Xiaoxuan's face was filled with longing. So the netherworld really existed. Even the judges and impermanences in the legends really existed. Zhou Xiaoxian was excited. She forgot about the awkwardness of meeting father and daughter for the first time and kept asking questions. Zhou Xuanji answered everything he knew, which made her cry out in surprise. Seeing that the girl was so excited, Zhou Xuanji felt very pleased. He had to admit that although the girl was still young, she was already a beauty. He could not let her run away from home alone in the future, unless she had the power to travel the world. The father and daughter chatted by the riverside. Dust billowed, and the grassland had turned into a wasteland. Two silhouettes levitated in the air. They were both wearing golden armor. Xianyuan Huangchen is dead. He was a fifth tribulation scattered immortal, and he died the moment he came down. No wonder the Heavenly Hall wants the Heavenly Guards to attack the northern wilderness region. One of the muscular men sighed in amazement, and the other Heavenly Guard nodded. The other Heavenly Guard had messy hair and a pair of sharp horns. He frowned and said, "There's an extremely powerful sword chi here. There's only one possibility, and that's the Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji. He did not die and came back from the netherworld." Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji. This person's name had already spread across the upper realm. Shi Shenzong called him the most powerful genius and the rival of his life. The hegemon Sword Emperor said that he was his brother. It was all thanks to Zhou Xuanji that he was enlightened. The sky-sundering Sword Emperor thought that this brat was the reincarnation of a powerful cultivator and had a powerful background. This time, Zhou Xuanji was on the Heavenly Guard's must-kill list, and he was ranked first. Because of Xianyuan Zhou, the conflict between the Heavenly Hall and Zhou Xuanji could not be resolved. Moreover, Zhou Xuanji had the Tianxia map. At this moment, a loud cry resounded across the entire northern wilderness region. I am the great god of the Heavenly Hall, Spirit Sovereign Yen. The northern wilderness region has disregarded heaven's will and angered the heavens. From today onwards, the immortal gods will guide all living beings in the northern wilderness region. The heavenly guards will build heavenly steels in various places. Mortals like you must pay tribute and kneel to them every day. Anyone who disobeys will be killed without mercy. This voice was extremely majestic, like the might of the heavens. All living beings were in awe. The world was in an uproar. The immortal gods had descended. Heaven's will was going to enslave the mortals. Zhou Xuanji and Zhou Shaoxian, who were by the river, heard Spirit Sovereign Yan's words too. Their expressions were different. Zhou Xuanji was thinking about Spirit Sovereign Yan's cultivation with a frown. Just from the voice alone, he seemed to be very powerful, even more powerful than Lu Wuji. Zhou Shaoxian was frightened. To mortals, the immortal gods were lofty and undefeatable. How could she not be afraid? The following names are those that the heavens must kill. Those who provide clues or help to kill these people will be blessed by the heavens. Their cultivation and fate will grow tremendously, and they may even be listed as immortals. They are Zhou Xuanji, Biyao Yisan, Feng Gyul, Xian Xianghua. Spirit Sovereign Yan's voice came again. This time, his words were even more explosive. Zhou Shaoxian got up in fright and cried out anxiously, Father, run quickly. The immortal gods want to kill you. Zhou Xuanji stood up slowly. He stroked her hair and smiled, Don't be afraid, Father. It's not certain who will kill who. Very good. He did not expect the Heavenly Hall to kill him as soon as they descended. Since that was the case, he would not hold back. He turned around and walked toward Skyfall. Follow me, he said. Zhou Shaoxian was stunned and quickly followed him. At the same time, the world was shocked. All the empires and kingdoms were in an uproar. What do you mean? Why do you want to kill the Sword Emperor? That's right. If not for the Sword Emperor, Lu Wuji would have killed us all. Why do the immortal gods act like demons? They force us to worship them and even want us to help them kill them. The immortal gods are heartless. The ancient sages were right. Never trust the immortal gods completely. Trust the heavens. *T. They must be demons pretending to be immortal gods. But they came from the upper realm and must be very powerful. Who can defeat them? Come. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 371. Skyfall. Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Zongjian, Lin Changge, and the others gathered in a stone pavilion. Everyone had a serious look on their faces. They were no different from how they were 13 years ago. Even Jiang Shui, who had given birth, looked like a young girl. This means that Master is fine and still alive, right? Huang Lianxin broke the silence and said with a smile, causing everyone to roll their eyes. In their hearts, Zhou Xuanji had never died. Daoya old man sighed and said, Looks like it's because of that Tian that the heavenly palace hates Xuanji so much. Jiang Shui frowned and said, If Xuanji is already in the northern wilderness region, why isn't he back yet? Is he in trouble? The person she cared about the most was always Zhou Xuanji. Even Zhou Shaoxian could not shake his position in her heart. Lin Changge said, Why don't I ask around? If he's on the mainland, there must be news about him already. It's highly likely that he's on the coast. Even though Zhou Xuanji disappeared, he did not leave. All of them firmly believed that Zhou Xuanji would come back. Daoya old man waved his hand and smiled. I have a feeling that he and Xiao Xian will be back soon. Jiang Shui was surprised and asked, "They're together?" Daoya old man smiled without saying a word. After that, they started to discuss Emperor Sword Court's recent actions. The Heavenly Hall wanted to kill Zhou Xuanji, so the disciples could not casually go out. It was too dangerous. In the imperial garden of the Hunyuan Empire, when Sunlight Emperor was practicing calligraphy, a man in black appeared behind him out of nowhere. "Great Emperor, the Heavenly Palace has descended into the mortal world. What should we do?" The man in black asked in a deep voice. When he mentioned this, his voice trembled a little. The arrival of the Heavenly Hall would have an unprecedented impact on the northern wilderness region. Sunlight Emperor's expression did not change. He waved the brush and wrote down the words, "Spirit Sovereign Yen." Then he said leisurely, "Find out the location of Spirit Sovereign Yen and the whereabouts of other heavenly guards." He was not on the Heavenly Palace's must-kill list, but Spirit Sovereign Yen would definitely affect his progress. So, he had already taken Spirit Sovereign Yen as his enemy. Yes. The man in black accepted the order and left. Sunlight Emperor looked up at the sky and murmured, "What kind of world is the upper world?" His cultivation and lifespan were enough for him to ascend, but he wanted to continue to become stronger in the mortal world. When one ascended, there would be a chance of metamorphosis. The stronger one was in the mortal world, the more metamorphosis there would be. 1 became 10, and 2 became 20. Before ascension, there was a difference of 1, and after ascension, there was a difference of 10. After the Heavenly Hall descended, the northern wilderness region was in chaos. The heavenly guards were all great tribulations scattered immortals, and they forced the mortals to build temples or sacrificial altars in order to worship the Heavenly Hall. Occasionally, there would be killings, but the heavenly guards did not kill wantonly. As such, the humans in the northern wilderness region did not collapse, but they were still very depressed. Under the call of the immortal gods, more and more people started to chase after Zhou Xuanji, Biyao Yisan, and dozens of other experts. Zhou Xuanji did not recognize most of the names that Spirit Sovereign Yen had listed, but for the Heavenly Palace to remember them, they were definitely not simple. 10 days later, Zhou Xuanji and his daughter left the human race and entered the demon race's territory, heading toward Skyfall. Along the way, Zhou Xuanji was teaching Zhou Shaoxian sword techniques. He imparted the sky-dominating divine sword to Zhou Shaoxian and told her that this was the inheritance of an ancient sword emperor. She happily accepted it and no longer talked about the ancient sword emperor. On this day, Zhou Xuanji met a few people. They were Biyao Yisan and Feng Qiu. Seeing Zhou Xuanji, Biyao Yisan's face instantly became green. Feng Qiu's expression was also quite unnatural. What a coincidence. Zhou Xuanji greeted them with a smile. Zhou Shaoxian hid behind him and sized up Biyao Yisan and Feng Qiu curiously. Both of them did not look like ordinary people. Biyao Yisan said bitterly, "No wonder the Heavenly Palace is after me. I met you indeed." Whenever he met Zhou Xuanji, his luck would be extremely bad. Lu Wuji, who had just passed by, encountered the even more powerful Heavenly Palace. He suddenly wanted to die. Feng Qiu was shocked that Zhou Xuanji had returned from the netherworld. "Do you want to work together?" Zhou Xuanji asked with a smile. He did not have any ill feelings toward Great Emperor Heartless. If he brought this guy along and let him self-destruct in front of Spirit Sovereign Yen, it would weaken Spirit Sovereign Yen's power. "I feel unlucky whenever I see you." Humph. Biyao Yisan snorted coldly before leaving. Feng Qiu glanced at Zhou Xuanji and followed closely behind. "Who are they?" Zhou Xuanji asked curiously. Zhou Xuanji said intently, "One is a fortune teller, and the other is Great Emperor Heartless, who lived for 90,000 years. Interesting. He realized that Biyao Yisan had become more powerful. It seemed that this guy had not been idle these 13 years. Great Emperor Heartless? Zhou Shaoxian opened her eyes wide. She had heard of the legends of Great Emperor Heartless, but she did not expect such a person to live in the world. She suddenly felt reverence toward the world. Before, she was indeed childish. She always thought that she could be as famous as Zhou Xuanji. Under the blue sky, Skyfall was surrounded by dozens of heavenly guards. All of the Emperor Sword Court's disciples were waiting on the mountain. Looking at the mighty and domineering heavenly guards, the disciples felt extremely anxious. How powerful are these heavenly guards? They feel so powerful, more powerful than Marshal Uncle Ning and the others. It's over. We can't defeat them. The Grand Teacher isn't here. What should we do? They must want to kill the Grand Teacher. They're all from the upper realm. Even if the Grand Teacher is here, he might not be able to defeat them. It was the first time they were facing immortals from the upper realm. All of the disciples were very nervous, including Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Congjian, and the others. Daoya Old Man flew into the air and cupped his fist as he asked, "Immortals, what business do you have here?" The heavenly guards were very pleased with his words. They were not real immortals or gods, but to mortals, they were gods. The leader of the heavenly guards stood out and said, "I'm Heavenly General Zhenwu. This time, I'm leading troops to suppress Zhou Xuanji. Tell me where Zhou Xuanji is." With their cultivation, they could naturally tell that Zhou Xuanji was not at Skyfall. However, the northern wilderness region was very big, and it would be too troublesome to find Zhou Xuanji. As such, they wanted to find him through Emperor Sword Court. Hearing this, Daoya Old Man smiled bitterly and said, 13 years ago, after he fought with Lu Wuji and fell into the netherworld, he never appeared again. We don't know where he is either. The netherworld? Heavenly General Zhenwu frowned. How can mortals go to the netherworld? Daoya Old Man did not hide anything. In the past 13 years, he had often divined Lu Wuji's whereabouts. Out of 10 times, he had only succeeded once. He divined that Lu Wuji was in the netherworld and was lying in ambush for Zhou Xuanji. This was the first time he had told them about this. Previously, he had not even told Jiang Shui and the others. Hearing this, Heavenly General Zhenwu's frown deepened as he said, "You mean that Zhou Xuanji is already dead?" Daoya Old Man did not reply, his face full of sorrow. "If that's the case, then all of you can die too," Heavenly General Zhenwu said in a low voice. After that, he raised his spear and was prepared to attack. "Don't." Daoya Old Man became anxious and immediately cried out, "He might come back. We can be your hostages." He was not afraid of death, but the hundreds of thousands of people on Skyfall could not die because of this. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 372. Wait for him to resurrect? How long will that take? Trying to trick me? You guys should just die first. Heavenly General Zhenwu said with a cold expression. After that, he swept his spear down. Daoya Old Man was caught off guard and was split into 2 halves. Blood sprayed through the sky as he fell. This scene made the eyes of hundreds of thousands of disciples turn red. Su Yang leaped up, raised his treasured sword, and roared furiously, "What are the disciples of Emperor Sword Court still standing there for? Rather than dying, it was better to die in battle. Don't forget the purpose of our Emperor Sword Court." Daoya Old Man was Zhou Xuanji's senior, and he was the most respected person in Skyfall. For him to be killed like this was undoubtedly trampling on Emperor Sword Court's face. Supporting the world with the sword. Using the sword to save the world. Supporting the world with the sword. Using the sword to save the world. Supporting the world with the sword. Using the sword to save the world. Several 100,000 disciples drew their swords, roaring in unison. As they shouted, they leapt into the air, flying into formation. Lin Changge, Ning Zifeng, Xiao Jinghong, and the rest followed suit. The 4 mountain-guarding kings roared and transformed into their true forms. Finyu Dragon King flew out from the back of the mountain, his dragon body expanding rapidly. The heavenly guards, on the other hand, were disdainful. A group of mortals dared to resist. They would only die a more painful death. Jiang Shui gripped her staff and took a deep breath. Her eyes were filled with determination. Since Xian Ji wasn't around, she had to protect Skyfall. Zhou Xuanji had encountered such an undefeatable enemy more than once. Get into formation and kill the enemy. She raised the formation up high and shouted loudly. Raging flames coiled around her body and turned into a fire dragon. Violent winds whistled over and turned into a tornado that stood above her head. Countless water droplets appeared out of thin air and condensed into a giant water spear. The second-generation disciples formed the Sealing Dream Sword Formation, while the third-generation disciples formed the 100-star sky-covering sword formation. Can't even take a single blow. Heavenly General Zhenwu shook his head. He had wanted to see if Zhou Xuanji's disciple was powerful, but it turned out that he was just so. Xiao. The sound of air being torn apart suddenly rang out, tearing apart everything. With a poochie sound, the ghost wail pierced Heavenly General Zhenwu's chest. The world fell silent. All of the heavenly guards immediately turned around and saw Zhou Xuanji carrying his daughter flying over on his sword. Zhou Xiaoshuan's face was full of excitement as she mumbled, so handsome, ranged sword propelling. She had also learned it before, but she felt that it was just an ordinary sword technique. It was too much of a test of one's accuracy. But when she saw Zhou Xuanji use ranged sword propelling, she immediately wanted to pick up this sword technique again. I am not dead yet. Who dares to disturb my Emperor Sword Court? Are you tired of living? Zhou Xuanji's laughter resounded through the clouds, causing all of Emperor Sword Court's disciples to explode. Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Zongjian, and the others were also very excited. He was finally back. When Jiang Shui saw the scene of Zhou Xuanji hugging Zhou Xiaoxian, tears streamed down her face instantly. She smiled in pleasant surprise. Her Xuanji had returned, and he had even found their daughter. Woo! The wails of gods and ghosts rang out one after another. Heavenly General Zhenwu's expression turned ugly as he shook his arms and forced the divine sword out of his chest. He turned to look at Zhou Xuanji and said coldly, "You've come at the right time. I'll kill you first and let your disciples watch you die before making them die in despair." Boom! He raised his spear and charged toward Zhou Xuanji, and dozens of heavenly guards also charged toward Zhou Xuanji. They already knew that Xianyuan Huangshan was suspected to have died in Zhou Xuanji's hands, so they did not dare to be careless. Zhou Xuanji directly took out the sun-devouring Tiango sword. Celestial shaking grey divine energy entered his body, and his aura soared. The tri-sun flame qi robe fluttered, and Zhou Xiaoxian, who was in his embrace, stared with wide eyes. So powerful, this power, she stared at Zhou Xuanji's face as she muttered to herself. Zhou Xuanji did not put her down, and he held her waist with one hand as he swung his sword with the other. 5 sword souls were condensed by him. Sky-dominating divine sword, Soul Eater / Tempest / 10,000 ultimate steps, and Emperor's Way 1,000-hand sword Buddha. The 5 sword souls gave off different lights and shined on his body, making him look like a god. This was the first time he had used the sun-devouring Tiango sword with his full strength. Facing Lu Wuji before, that fellow had been too weak and had knelt before he could use his full strength. Zhou Xuanji quickly swung his sword, and the sword souls continuously shot out, incredibly fast. In the blink of an eye, the 6 heavenly guards were directly turned to dust. Heavenly General Zhenwu felt quite shocked and hurriedly came behind Zhou Xuanji. He gripped his spear with both hands and ferociously stabbed out. A world-destroying gale wrapped around the spear's shaft as it shot out. A gale swept out, wanting to destroy Zhou Xuanji and Lu Wuji's souls. Zhou Xuanji flipped his hand and slashed out. A sword soul shot out, and countless rays of sword light flashed out. Sword chi swept out, causing Heavenly General Zhenwu to cough up blood and fly back. Primordial Chaos Sword Shadows Sword Soul. It was as if millions of swords had simultaneously slammed into Heavenly General Zhenwu, causing his qi and blood to tremble and making him feel incredibly uncomfortable. After flying back hundreds of kilometers, he landed on a tall mountain and used the momentum to rush at Zhou Xuanji. Boom! The tall mountain was shattered by the shockwave, and dust rose into the sky. Zhou Xuanji looked at him and smirked, giving a condescending smile. Seeing this, Zhou Xiaoshuan's heart rate sped up. Such boldness, even facing an immortal god, he was still confident and domineering. Her heart was filled with pride. This was her father. The number one in the world, peerless and unparalleled. All of the legendary swords appeared around Zhou Xuanji, all of them exploding out with power. 10,000 ghosts howled, crimson dragons roared, hell kings roared, phoenixes cried, dragons roared, thunder rumbled, etc. All sorts of deafening sounds gathered together, as if the heavens and earth were going to explode. Seeing this, all of Emperor Sword Court's disciples were dumbfounded. In front of Zhou Xuanji, the heavenly guards seemed so weak and were no longer peerlessly domineering. Zhou Xuanji also unleashed the primordial chaos sword shadow. Millions of sword shadows appeared and gathered into mountains and rivers, giving off a boundless aura. It was the primordial chaos mountains and rivers, just like his magic energy, boundless and mighty. Immortal God? I'll show you the power of mortals. Zhou Xuanji loudly laughed as all of his legendary swords shot out, and the primordial chaos sword shadow also moved. The legendary swords and sword shadows shot out in different directions, causing the heavenly guards to flee. They flew into the sky and dove into the ground, but they were still unable to escape from this terrifying attack. Boom! 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 The ground shook, and trees were destroyed. Smoke filled the air, filling the sky and earth. Emperor Sword Court was so shocked that they all retreated to defend Skyfall. Heavenly guards were killed one after another, and pained cries continuously sounded out. So powerful, Zhao Zongjian gripped his fists. Looking at this majestic sword technique, he immediately wanted to learn it. A sword technique that was even more domineering than the Emperor's Wei Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha. The others also felt shocked, but they were more curious about Zhou Xuanji's cultivation. Too powerful. This was not the power that mortals should have. Zhou Xuanji. What divine weapon are you using? Heavenly General Zhenwu asked furiously. He swung his spear with both hands and blocked the endless sword shadows. Zhou Xuanji carried his daughter and flew up high. He looked down at Heavenly General Zhenwu and said, Sun-devouring Tiango sword, specialized in killing pigs and dogs. You, Heavenly General Zhenwu almost exploded in anger. This fellow dared to insult him. He gritted his teeth and raised his spear as he furiously roared, Heaven, please bestow me with divine power. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow and charged over with 10,000 ultimate steps. Pish. Heavenly General Zhenwu's head flew up, and blood spurted out from his neck. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 373. Before the heavenly power landed, Heavenly General Zhenwu's head was chopped off, and his life was cut off. His body was so powerful, but it was a pity that he could not withstand the sharpness of the celestial shaking legendary sword. Even his astral spirit did not have the time to project. To prevent any accidents, Zhou Xuanji activated Six-Path Sword Shadow and Soul Eater Slash, turning Heavenly General Zhenwu into ashes. The entire process happened so quickly that Zhou Xiaoxian was dazzled. Before she could see clearly what happened, Heavenly General Zhenwu was no longer there. Zhou Xuanji noticed her gaze and lowered his head with a smile, Don't worry. With your old man here, no one can hurt you. After that, he walked toward the other heavenly guards. At this point in the battle, there were only 17 heavenly guards left. They trembled in fear and quickly retreated. Zhou Xuanji laughed heartily, Tell Spirit Sovereign Yan that if anyone dares to come to Skyfall again, he will be the one to die. The heavenly guards did not dare to threaten him and quickly fled. The battle ended just like that. Zhou Xuanji was not injured at all. He displayed his might and showed everyone how powerful he was. He stored all his legendary swords and entered the mountain with Zhou Shaoxian. All the disciples cried out the Sword Emperor's name in excitement. Too powerful. They had never seen such a powerful person before. Especially the new disciples. Each of them was more excited than the last, and they could not wait to rush up to Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji looked around and realized that the number of disciples had doubled. It seemed that Emperor's sword court had not stopped developing during the years he was away, which made him very satisfied. In today's battle, I want to tell you to cultivate well. The way of the sword can slay immortals and slay gods. I hope that you can protect me one day. Zhou Xuanji's voice resounded throughout Skyfall, and all the disciples felt their blood boiling. I hope that you can protect me one day. This sentence was just too charming. Even the odd job disciples had the urge to break Zhou Xuanji's body and crush his bones. If it was someone else who said this, they would not care. But Zhou Xuanji had already shown how powerful he was. How could someone who could protect him be weak? Zhou Xuanji brought Zhou Shaoxian to Jiang Shui and said with a gentle smile, "I'm sorry for making you wait for 13 years. Let's go up and talk." As he spoke, he raised his right arm and embraced Jiang Shui. Hugging his wife and daughter, he turned into a beam of sword light and soared into the sky. Xiao Jinghong, Lin Changge, and the others followed closely behind him. Above the clouds, everyone gathered in the stone pavilion, and before anyone could ask anything, Zhou Xuanji told them about his experiences over the past few years. After he finished speaking, everyone looked at each other and exclaimed in surprise. So there really is an underworld. Master is really amazing. You can even make friends with Judge Cui. In the future, when you go to the netherworld, won't you have someone to rely on? Ha ha ha, does that mean we don't have to fear death? You're thinking too much. At most, I'll let you reincarnate into a good life. Master, you're truly number one in the world now. You're only 73 years old, not even 100. When mentioning Zhou Xuanji's age, everyone could not help but shake their heads and sigh. This was too much of a blow. Zhou Shaoxian stood behind Zhou Xuanji proudly. She also wanted to become a great tribulation bodiless immortal before she turned 100 years old. For the next period of time, let the disciples go out as little as possible. Of course, there is no need to prohibit them. Heroes are born in troubled times. Everyone has to be responsible for their own choices. Zhou Xuanji instructed, and Xiao Jinghong nodded. As Zhou Xuanji's only disciple, he was in charge of all the disciples. The others were in charge of different organizations, such as Xuanji Sword Library, 10,000 Swords House, and so on. After that, he asked everyone to tell him about Emperor Sword Court's situation. Now, Emperor Sword Court had more than 1 million disciples. There were 360,000 third-generation disciples and 700,000 odd job disciples. 3 of the second-generation disciples were missing. They died in accidents while out on missions. Just as everyone was chatting, the pale-faced Daoya old man walked over. Zhou Shaoxian immediately dashed over and hugged him. "Bad old man, I'm back." She giggled. Seeing her, Daoya old man smiled amiably and cursed, "Brat, do you dare to go out alone again?" There was no etiquette in their conversation, but they enjoyed it. The reason why she was named Shaoxian was because of Zhou Xuanji's mother, Lady Zhaoxian. The young Lady Zhaoxian was the same as Zhou Shaoxian. She was disrespectful to Daoya old man, but their relationship was the best. After the grandfather and granddaughter chatted for a while, Daoya old man sat down beside Zhou Xuanji and sighed, "Brat, why didn't you come earlier? If I used my divine ability again, I might really die." His undying divine ability consumed a lot of energy, and he used his lifespan as the price. As such, even though he was only a few thousand years old, he looked even more ancient than Xian Xianghua, who was over 10,000 years old. It was as if he already had one foot in the coffin. Zhou Xuanji shrugged and said, "When the time comes, tell Magistrate Chui my name. In your next life, I'll let you live in a wealthy family and let you live a happy and romantic life. Daoya old man glared at him, feeling quite depressed. Following this, Zhou Xuanji asked Beixiao Wangjian to prepare some food and wine. He was going to drink to his heart's content today. In the northern wilderness region, on an ice mountain in the north, the Heavenly Palace had temporarily built an ice palace. Spirit Sovereign Yen sat on the main seat. He was nearly 30 meters tall and wore heavy chest armor. His hair was loose, and his muscles were exaggerated. His face was valiant, and his eyes gave off an oppressive aura. He held a massive sword in his right hand, and the blade was pointed at the ground. He looked at the heavenly guards kneeling below and said in a low voice, Zhou Xuanji killed Heavenly General Zhenwu and 20 or so heavenly guards. Heavenly General Zhenwu's cultivation was 7th tribulation scattered immortal, and the weakest of the heavenly guards was a 1st tribulation scattered immortal. How could they not defeat Zhou Xuanji? His first reaction was disbelief. How could there be such a powerful existence in the mortal realm? Moreover, Zhou Xuanji was not even 100 years old. Even if he was the reincarnation of a powerful being, he could not be so ridiculously powerful. The heavenly guard gritted his teeth and replied, yes. Thinking back to the battle back then, he felt a chill. Too powerful. He mustered up his courage and said, Sovereign, a lot of your cultivation has been sealed, so you can't be careless. This boy has power that surpasses mortals. Spirit Sovereign Yen frowned and coldly harumphed, as long as he doesn't surpass Great Tribulation scattered immortal, he won't be able to kill me. Hearing this, the heavenly guard did not say anything else. Spirit Sovereign Yen, right? You want to kill this emperor? You really don't know the immensity of the heavens and earth. Get out here and die. Biyao Isen's furious voice sounded out from outside the palace, causing the heavenly guard to get up. Spirit Sovereign Yan's frown became even deeper as he muttered, Great Emperor Heartless. In the upper realm, Great Emperor Heartless was an influential figure, and he had once looked up to him. However, this fellow had already reincarnated, and even dealing with Xianyuan Zhou was very difficult. He stood up and walked out of the ice palace with his sword. Biyao Isen and Feng Qiu stood amidst the flying snow. One stood proudly, while the other felt uneasy. Seeing Spirit Sovereign Yen, Feng Qiu swallowed his saliva and said, Great Emperor, are you really going to do this? Biyao Isen laughed condescendingly and said loudly, You don't know this, but back then, when this emperor was in the upper realm, even the Heavenly Hall's lord had to treat me with respect. He's just a spirit sovereign, so what? If it was before, this emperor could kill a bunch of brats like him with a single slap. I'll continue writing. There's more today. The monthly votes are coming. Come. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 374. Hearing Biyao Isen's arrogant words, Spirit Sovereign Yen coldly harumphed. You are no longer the all-powerful Great Emperor Heartless from back then. Because of your own selfish desires, you were deceived by someone and gave up your cultivation to descend into the mortal realm. What a fool. Today, I will let you feel pain that you have never felt before. I will let you be defeated by an existence that you once looked down on, and I will let you live a life worse than death. Spirit Sovereign Yen said coldly. As he spoke, he walked towards Biyao Isen with his sword. His aura quickly exploded out, shaking this world of ice and snow. Feng Qiu was so frightened that he took 3 steps back and gulped. He said carefully, If you are going to, remember to remind me. Thinking about Biyao Isen's past accomplishments, he did not feel confident. Sigh. Why did he have to follow a great emperor like this? It was too dangerous. Biyao Isen did not reply and continued to look at Spirit Sovereign Yen. A spear wrapped with silver dragon energy appeared in his hand, and he laughed proudly as he said, Brat, watch carefully. He raised the spear and charged towards Spirit Sovereign Yen. Advancing with indomitable will. Unstoppable. After returning to Skyfall, Zhou Xuanji spent 5 days teaching his disciples with the sword before spending the rest of the time with his wife and daughter. After teaching Zhou Shaoxian, he found that this girl's talent in the way of the sword was truly amazing. She was not inferior to Lin Chang'e at all. Of course, compared to the two 10,000-year princes, she was still a bit inferior. Chen Bantian and Meng Tianlang had become close friends. 3 months ago, the two of them had gone out to train and had not returned. It was said that Chen Bantian had reached the spirit refinement stage, while Meng Tianlang had begun to break through to the great realization stage. Putting aside Zhou Xuanji, this cultivation speed was already inconceivable. Emperor Sword Court's strength increased day by day. Even though it had not produced a great tribulation scattered immortal, it could already rank in the top 10 in the world. At this rate, within 100 years, it would have 3 more great tribulation scattered immortals. Apart from the dense spirit chi in Skyfall, it was also related to the colorful celestial tree. This tree needed to bear fruit once every 100 years, and the fruits that fell to the ground would disappear within 10 years. As such, it had to be consumed and could not be stored. Before leaving, Zhou Xuanji listed the 5-color celestial fruit as a first-class reward in the firmament inner court. Doing missions in the firmament net could earn contribution points, which could be exchanged for sword techniques, spirit pills, medicines, swords, natural treasures, and so on. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. The heavenly guards did not come to capture Zhou Xuanji again. He enjoyed the leisure. On this day, Lin Chang'e brought back the report, and he stood in front of Zhou Xuanji with a strange expression. Zhou Xuanji looked at Zhou Shaoxian, who was training her sword not far away. "What's wrong?" he asked. Lin Chang'e said, "Great Emperor Heartless self-destructed again, and his opponent was Spirit Venerable Yen." The explosion flattened the snowy mountains in the surrounding 100 miles, causing a sky-high avalanche that engulfed the cities at the edge of the human race. There were countless casualties. At the mention of this matter, his expression became increasingly strange. As a great emperor, other than self-detonation, did he not have any other abilities? Zhou Xuanji laughed. This old fellow was quite something, self-destructing anyone he saw. Even if Spirit Sovereign Yen did not die, he would be incredibly angry. He asked, "Spirit Sovereign Yen hasn't moved recently. Could it be that he's severely injured?" If that was the case, this would be the best chance to attack Spirit Sovereign Yen. Lin Chang'e nodded. Because of this, all the heavenly guards have been transferred back to overlook North Ridge. Zhou Xuanji immediately got up and gathered everyone, telling them about his arrangements. No one had any objections. Zhou Xuanji was already powerful enough, to the point that they could not predict him, so they could only support him. "You still need to be careful, don't let your guard down just because you've become stronger," Jiang Shui reminded him. However, she believed that Zhou Xuanji would not be arrogant. If he was arrogant, he would have died long ago. Ever since he had become famous, Zhou Xuanji had been more cautious than anyone else. In his own words, he was paranoid, so every time he killed an enemy, he would stab them tens of times. "Father, take me with you," Zhou Shaoxian said excitedly. She really liked the scene of Zhou Xuanji taking her into battle. She could sense how powerful he was, and she felt a sense of contempt for him, as if he was just a drop in the ocean. Zhou Xuanji glared at her and said, "Do you want to get your father killed? You're just a small fry, so just focus on cultivating at Skyfall." After saying this, he turned into a ray of sword light and quickly disappeared over the horizon. Zhou Shaoxian pouted, feeling quite wronged. Jiang Shui stroked her head and smiled as she said, "Your father is right." Everyone laughed and teased her, making her so angry that she drew her sword and chased after them. After leaving Skyfall, Zhou Xuanji stood on the windcutter sword and rushed toward the north at full speed. He took out the bronze dagger and sent his magic energy into it, summoning Dao Seeker. Soon, Dao Seeker's image appeared. "Are you thinking about Spirit Sovereign Yan's injuries?" Dao Seeker asked first, causing Zhou Xuanji to raise his brow. "Ho, This old fellow's predictions were quite accurate. Before Zhou Xuanji could speak, he continued, Spirit Sovereign Yan is indeed injured, but he still has power that surpasses Lu Wuji's. Moreover, a month has passed, and his injuries have mostly recovered. He also has hundreds of heavenly guards with him, and they are all great tribulation scattered immortals. No matter how powerful you are, it will be very difficult for you to kill him. Zhou Xuanji gave a smile that did not seem like a smile and said, You mean for me to retreat? Dao Seeker shook his head and said, Go to Juadi Cliff. There's a very powerful being hidden there. You have already established a connection. Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes and immediately thought of Dugu. Dugu was most likely the invincible genius from 50,000 years ago, Devil Emperor Dugu. However, why was his soul at Juadi Cliff? Didn't he ascend? Could he have reincarnated into the mortal realm like Biyao? Even if we find him, how long will it take for him to recover his cultivation in his current state? Zhou Xuanji asked. He did not slow down, nor did he change his direction. Dao Seeker was silent. This was indeed a problem. Dugu was only a remnant soul now. Even if he was rescued, he would not be of much use. I'm most worried about one thing now. If I kill Spirit Sovereign Yan, will the Heavenly Hall send someone even more powerful? Zhou Xuanji continued to ask. After fighting the small, he would fight the big. After fighting the big, he would fight the old. Would there be an end to this? Before, he felt that the antagonists were all pigs. They sent themselves to him one after another. But now that he was in the same situation, he felt troubled. Each of the antagonists was very powerful. They won't. Spirit Sovereign Yan is already the most powerful cultivator that the heavenly law can tolerate. If they send someone more powerful, the heavenly law will not tolerate it. The heavenly hall will also be punished by the heavenly law. They won't be so stupid, Dao Seeker replied, which made Zhou Xuanji heave a sigh of relief. If so, then Spirit Sovereign Yan was dead for sure. After that, the two chatted for a while. Dao Seeker mentioned Xian Xianghua and said that she was close to the time of her ascension. She had lived for tens of thousands of years, and her cultivation was high. It was hard for the mortal realm to tolerate her. Zhou Xuanji was a little worried about her. The heavenly hall was after her. If she ascended, she would not have a good time in the upper realm. 2 days later, Zhou Xuanji passed by Great Zhou and Great Chen and came to the Qi Empire. The Qi Empire had always kept a low profile. Among the 7 empires, it was not eye-catching. But it was said that there was an old ancestor who had lived for tens of thousands of years in the Qi Empire. His power was unfathomable. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 375. After passing by the Qi Empire, Zhou Xuanji did not stop. He did not take that mysterious old ancestor to heart. However, just as he was about to fly past the Qi Empire's border, a voice called out to Zhou Xuanji. Sword Emperor, please wait. Zhou Xuanji stopped and looked back. He saw a white-haired old man sitting on a crimson-red gourd flying over. He was short and had a red face, and he looked at Zhou Xuanji with an indecipherable gaze. Zhou Xuanji looked at him and waited for him to speak. For this fellow to be able to catch up to him, his cultivation was naturally not simple. According to his estimations, he was at least a second tribulation scattered immortal, or even a third tribulation scattered immortal. The Qi Empire actually had such an expert hidden. Sword Emperor, are you going to deal with Spirit Sovereign Yan? The white-haired old man asked as he bowed. Zhou Xuanji calmly asked, What do you want? The white-haired old man hurriedly explained, I have no ill intentions. My name is Qi Wei, and I'm the founding emperor of the Qi Empire. I'm also on Spirit Sovereign Yan's kill list. Founding Emperor Qi Wei. Zhou Xuanji came to a realization. He remembered this name, but because he did not know him, he did not think too much about it. You want to ally with me? Zhou Xuanji asked. This old fellow's strength could at most tie down a few heavenly guards, and he could not threaten Spirit Sovereign Yen at all. Founding Emperor Qi Wei nodded and bitterly smiled as he said, I know the Heavenly Hall's goal and Spirit Sovereign Yan's selfishness. Even though I can't help you in terms of battle power, I can help you plan. After saying this, he waved his right hand and a formless barrier covered the two of them. At a glance, the two of them seemed to be invisible, and even divine sense could not enter. Zhou Xuanji asked in confusion, they all have ulterior motives? Not just to take revenge for Tian? Founding Emperor Qi Wei nodded and said, the Northern Wilderness is welcoming a world epic, and the Heavenly Hall wants to support a new protagonist of the world to control the Northern Wilderness fate and make it theirs. In the Upper Realm, each major faction controls one or even several mortal realms, and they are the immortal gods of the mortal realms. The Heavenly Hall is one of them. However, in the Upper Realm, true immortal gods exist, but they are high and mighty and do not participate in battles. Spirit Sovereign Yen volunteered not because he's loyal to the Heavenly Palace, but because of Fate Emperor River and his son. His son was banished to the mortal realm, so he wants to help his son become a great emperor and escape the Heavenly Palace's control. Zhou Xuanji frowned. He did not expect the Upper Realm to be so complicated. Spirit Sovereign Yen, who looked like a lackey, actually had his own plans. Who was his son? I don't know who Spirit Sovereign Yan's son is for now, but he definitely has great talent, so we have to be careful. Even if we kill Spirit Sovereign Yen, his son might rise up and take revenge for his father. Founding Emperor Qi Wei sighed. His wariness towards Spirit Venerable Yan's son surpassed his wariness towards Spirit Venerable Yen. Zhou Xuanji asked with narrowed eyes, how do you know so much? Founding Emperor Qi Wei didn't hide it either. My ancestor had once ascended and appeared in my dreams 3,000 years ago, so I had no choice but to go into seclusion. Zhou Xuanji sighed in amazement in his heart. Why did it feel like all of them had backgrounds in the Upper Realm? It turned out that this world was a plaything of the Upper Realm, a game of chess created by them. What do you want me to do? Zhou Xuanji continued to ask. After saying so much, he most likely didn't want him to directly go and find Spirit Sovereign Yen. Founding Emperor Qi Wei said in a low voice, go and take over Fate Emperor River. You will definitely be injured in your battle with Spirit Sovereign Yen, and his son might take this opportunity to devour Fate Emperor River. When that time comes, he did not say anything else. Zhou Xuanji raised his eyebrows and asked mockingly, does Fate Emperor River belong to me or to you? This was a river for becoming a great emperor. Founding Emperor Qi Wei shrugged and said, of course it belongs to you. Even if I have Fate Emperor River, I will not be able to become a great emperor. You're different. After ascending, our clan can still support you and help you reach the pinnacle. I just hope that you won't forget this favor in the future. Zhou Xuanji smirked and said, is Fate Emperor River in Sun Hill or the Hunyuan Empire? Sun Hill, Fate Emperor River is difficult to move, Founding Emperor Qi Wei replied. Founding Emperor Qi Wei replied, and then the two of them rushed toward Sun Tomb. Overlook North Ridge, Ice Palace. Spirit Sovereign Yen sat on the main seat, his expression grim. Hundreds of heavenly guards were gathered in the palace, all of them incredibly nervous. Have you still not found his whereabouts? Spirit Sovereign Yen asked in a low voice. He was not asking about Zhou Xuanji or Biyao Yisan, but about his son. A horned heavenly guard came out and cupped his fists as he said, Ji Xian has already reincarnated for a long time, and his fate has long since changed. It will be very difficult to find him, we need time. When mentioning Ji Xian, the heavenly guard's expressions became strange. They all knew that Ji Xian was a sinner of the heavenly palace. Why was Spirit Sovereign Yen looking for him? They did not dare to ask too much, this was the mortal realm, and they could not contact the heavenly palace. They could only rely on Spirit Sovereign Yen. Continue to search. Also, have you found where Fate Emperor River is? Spirit Sovereign Yen said impatiently as he waved his hand. Ever since Biyao had self-destructed, his soul had been damaged, and the injuries to his body could not be healed, making him feel quite uncomfortable. We found it. It's in Sun Hill, and its owner, Yang Di, has moved to the Hunyuan Empire. We can occupy Fate Emperor River at any time, another heavenly guard replied, causing Spirit Sovereign Yen to nod. This made him feel quite pleased. Continue to keep an eye on it, Spirit Sovereign Yen ordered. Following this, his tone changed, and his expression became savage as he said, up until now, not a single person on the list has died. The higher-ups are very unhappy with us, so we must force them out. Head to the 8 sanctums and 7 empires to capture 10,000 people each and bring them here. Tell the world that we will capture them once a month until Zhou Xuanji, Biyao, and the others appear. The heavenly guards nodded, not feeling guilty at all. After all, the northern wilderness human race's fate had come to an end, and their deaths were not to be regretted. Also, send 5 Fifth Tribulation scattered immortals overseas to find suitable races and help them enter the northern wilderness, Spirit Sovereign Yen said. Once the human race was destroyed, it was time for new races to take their place. In front of the bigger picture, the lives of a single race were not much. Sun Hill. Zhou Xuanji and founding Emperor Qi Wei sped on the clouds and looked at the boundless mountain forest ahead. Zhou Xuanji said in amazement, "This place is quite beautiful and has abundant spirit qi. It's suitable for cultivation." Founding Emperor Qi Wei nodded and said enviously, "It's all thanks to Fate Emperor River." He was proficient in fate detection and could divine the location of Fate Emperor River. The two of them flew into the forest without slowing down. Soon, they stopped in front of a waterfall. The waterfall was hundreds of meters tall, and the water surged violently. As the water hit the reefs below, countless diamond-like water droplets appeared. The entrance is within the waterfall. There's a mountain path inside that leads underground, founding Emperor Qi Wei said. He waved his right hand, and following this, 3 cries sounded out from the forest opposite the waterfall. Sun Hill looked like it was uninhabited, but in actuality, Yang Di had nurtured many elites. However, if these elites encountered a great tribulation scattered immortal, they would not be able to escape death. Zhou Xuanji and founding Emperor Qi Wei flew into the waterfall. After a while, a ball of demonic qi swept over and entered the waterfall. Chapter 376. After walking for a few thousand meters, Zhou Xuanji and Xian Xuanji heard the sound of flowing river water. They flew out of the cave and landed on the ground. This was a spacious underground space, and there were all kinds of crystals embedded in the walls. There were also man-made oil lamps that lit up this space. In front of them, there was a river that was 15 meters wide. The river water was very rapid, and it flowed from the darkness to the darkness on the other side. Looking closely, one would find that the river water was quite strange. It seemed like a dense fog, but the sound of flowing water did not seem fake. Is this Fate Emperor River? Zhou Xuanji asked out of curiosity. The spirit qi here was very dense, and it was not inferior to the peak of Skyfall. Founding Emperor Qi Wei sighed in amazement and said, "It's the first time I've seen Fate Emperor River. It's said that Fate Emperor River flows in a cycle and only exists on this path." He paused before saying, "If you want to become a great emperor, you have to jump into Fate Emperor River. However, if your body is weak, you will be crushed by the flow of fate. Are you confident?" Zhou Xuanji frowned and asked, "Doesn't becoming a great emperor require the acknowledgement of the heavenly law?" He was confident that he was strong enough, but he did not know much about Fate Emperor River, so he did not dare to act recklessly. "Indeed, but you can prove your Tao with power." At that moment, a familiar female voice sounded out, and Zhou Xuanji and Xian Xianghua looked over. A ball of demonic qi flew out from the cave, and after it dissipated, Xian Xianghua, who was dressed in a bewitching purple dress, walked over slowly. A ball of demonic qi flew out from the cave, and after the demonic qi dissipated, Xian Xianghua, who was dressed in a bewitching purple dress, walked over slowly. "Why are you here?" Zhou Xuanji asked out of curiosity. After 13 years, this old demonic woman was still as flirtatious as ever, and her aura was evidently more powerful. He felt that she was not any weaker than Shi Shenzong. It seemed that while he was not around, Long Aohua had not rested at all. Founding Emperor Qi Wei's expression slightly changed, and a look of wariness appeared in his eyes. Xian Xianghua. She was once the top cultivator in the world, and she was undoubtedly the top cultivator in the demonic path. How could he not have seen her before? Of course it's for Fate Emperor River. After that, she looked at Founding Emperor Qi Wei and teased, "Ho, little old man, you're not dead yet." Founding Emperor Qi Wei felt quite awkward and did not know what to say. Back then, he had also been defeated by Xian Xianghua. Before Yang Di had appeared, Xian Xianghua had been invincible in the world. Her strength, personality, and faction were all in line with Long Aotian's character, so Zhou Xuanji often called her Long Aohua. Back to the main topic, after the Heavenly Palace descended, I guessed that they would target Fate Emperor River, so I came to take a look. You've come at the right time. With your strength, you can definitely enter the river. As long as you become a great emperor, Spirit Sovereign Yen won't be able to do anything to you. Not only was this man in front of her the one she loved, but he was also her pride. He was less than 100 years old, but he had already surpassed the strength of a seventh tribulation scattered immortal. Even Yang Di was inferior to him. Zhou Xuanji asked, "Do you want to go down too?" Xian Xianghua shook her head and said, "If you didn't come, I would naturally go down and risk it all. But since you came, I will protect you. Moreover, your chances of success are greater than mine. You can help me after you become a martial emperor." Zhou Xuanji looked at her and said seriously, "Don't try to trick me. There can only be one great emperor in an era. If there were two great emperors, there would definitely be a battle. The two could not coexist." Xian Xianghua lifted up his chin and smiled as she asked, "How about you protect me in the future?" Zhou Xuanji fell silent. Ever since the two of them had met, it had always been Xian Xianghua who had protected him. Even though he had become powerful and had become the second or first in the world, he had never protected her. She was still so proud and aloof, roaming the world alone. Whenever something happened to him, she would always rush over immediately. If she had any fortuitous encounters, she would immediately inform Zhou Xuanji. This kindness was very great, and it made his heart feel heavy. "You should go down, you're about to ascend after all," Zhou Xuanji said as he sighed. Zhou Xuanji sighed. The thought of Xian Xianghua ascending made him feel a little sad. He did not know how long it would be before they met again. Xian Xianghua pushed him and smiled as she said, "If I become a great emperor and ascend, it will be even more troublesome. Don't waste time. After you become a great emperor, you can protect me after you ascend. If you don't become a great emperor and ascend, it will be difficult for you when you reach the upper realm." After saying this, she pushed Zhou Xuanji, wanting to push him into the river. He could not dissuade her, so he could only jump into Fate Emperor River. Founding Emperor Qi Wei, who had been eating dog food the entire time, sighed and said, "Who would have thought that Sect Lord Xian would have such a passionate side? If he was Xian Xianghua, how could he give this opportunity to the person he loved? He did not have the confidence." Xian Xianghua glanced at him condescendingly and said, "I can become a great emperor without Fate Emperor River. What do you know?" Founding Emperor Qi Wei chuckled. After entering Fate Emperor River, Zhou Xuanji's vision became hazy and he could not see anything around him. He could not sweep out with his divine sense either, and a terrifying impact continuously swept through his body. He immediately activated Golden Invincible Form, and heavenly lightning wrapped around his body to defend against the impact of fate. Is this what luck is? It's formless and colorless, and when gathered together, it has such an impact. He felt inwardly shocked and immediately activated the World Buddha art. He did not know how to use Fate Emperor River to become a great emperor. No one else knew either. Those who knew had long since ascended and did not leave behind any specific methods. Soon, he found that under the impact of fate, his body was gradually becoming stronger. This feeling, he suddenly thought of World Overlord. Perhaps he could use this opportunity to cultivate World Overlord. He sat cross-legged in Fate Emperor River and focused on cultivating. On a tall mountain at the border of Sun Hill, Dao Seeker stood before a cliff and looked in the direction of Fate Emperor River with a complicated expression. He mumbled, "It's too early. This path is not as beautiful as people think." A black shadow came out from his shoulder and turned into a horrified face. It laughed sinisterly and said, "You must have miscalculated. Who would have thought that he would reach fourth tribulation scattered immortal cultivation so quickly, and his strength even surpasses seventh tribulation scattered immortals? Who would have thought that he would enter Fate Emperor River so early?" Dao Seeker sighed and did not reply. Everything was fate, but it was also a variable. The human race is about to collapse, and he alone will not be enough to turn the situation around. After entering Fate Emperor River, it is extremely difficult to become a great emperor. Most geniuses have died at the bottom of the river. Even if he succeeds, he will not be able to save the human race. "You need to find another way," the black shadow said faintly. The black shadow said faintly. Dao Seeker understood this. But what other way was there? A few days after Zhou Xuanji entered Fate Emperor River, a piece of news spread across the world. The Heavenly Guards captured 10,000 people from each of the sanctums and empires. They claimed that they would capture people every month and bring them to the Ice Palace to be executed. They claimed that everyone on the kill list would be killed. Once this news spread, the world was shocked. They captured 150,000 people every month, and 1 million people would die in a year. As time passed, Spirit Sovereign Yen would become more and more impatient, and more people would die. But those who were being hunted down by the Heavenly Guards were all powerful. Who would be willing to accept their fate? Soon, the northern wilderness region was in complete chaos. Update at night. We are ranked 25, which is not enough. If the event ends and we are in the top 10, I will update at least 10 more chapters. If you participate in this activity, you can also get book coins and other prizes. Everyone, come to QQ to participate. On the Discover page, in the upper right corner of the Receive Benefits section, you can find the activity Online Literature True Love Battle. Recommendation votes, monthly votes, gifts, subscriptions, and shares can all help. Chapter 377. On the 5th day after the Heavenly Guard's words spread, the leaders of the 7 great dynasties and the 8 sacred grounds gathered together to discuss the matter of the Heavenly Hall. They were in a great hall of the Zhanghai Ziggurat. The Zhanghai Ziggurat was a neutral sacred land and rarely participated in battles. Its reputation was also the most reassuring. Yang Xindi knocked on the table with his finger and spoke first. The Sky Palace's plan is to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Not only is it justifiable to kill, but it also creates a gap between us and the top experts of the world. Once the Sword Emperor and Xian Xianghua are dead, even if the human race survives, we will be at death's door and forever be slaves. What he meant was very simple. He could not allow the Heavenly Palace to do whatever they wanted. Zheng Junlu added, "That's right. We should join forces with the Sword Arch and the others to counterattack the Heavenly Palace." The other leaders had similar opinions. Zhou Xuanji had saved the human race more than once. How could they sacrifice him? Furthermore, if he died, the human race would lose their strongest fighting force. Sunlight Emperor sat in the corner and said nothing. He was now the Hunyuan Emperor and also the strongest person present. Hearing others boast about Zhou Xuanji, he felt a little displeased. He was number 1 in the world. However, he wasn't angry. He knew who his enemy was. "I think we need to contact the outer seas. The human race should be united," Li Yinyu said. As soon as he said this, everyone fell silent. Overseas. Until today, the various factions could already feel how powerful the overseas region was. However, they did not point it out and were still immersed in the illusion that the northern wilderness region was the most powerful. Now that Li Yinyu mentioned overseas, they felt even more pressured. Sun Tomb, within Fate Emperor River. Vast amounts of spirit qi rose up from the bottom of Fate Emperor River and flowed into Zhou Xuanji's body, making him feel delighted. He could clearly feel his cultivation rapidly increasing. This feeling was indescribable. At the same time, his understanding of the world overlord became less and less. Fate Emperor River was the materialization of the heaven and earth's fate, and the spiritual qi it absorbed came from the depths of the ground. It was the purest spiritual qi. The profundity of being the overlord of the world was to draw upon the power of heaven and earth to become the overlord of the world. It was similar to the current situation. Dong! 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 His heartbeats suddenly sounded out. It was powerful, and even Fate Emperor River could not drown it out. On the riverside, Xian Xianghua and founding Emperor Qi Wei heard it as well. Just how strong is his physical body? Founding Emperor Qi Wei was speechless. This was the first time he had heard such a terrifying heartbeat. It was like a primordial demon that had lived for countless years. Xian Xianghua fell into deep thought. This kind of heartbeat was clearly not achieved through cultivation. It seemed like this kid was not simple and had many secrets. Or perhaps it was the effect of the world Buddha art. No matter what, she was still very happy. She liked how unfathomable Zhou Xuanji was. If she could see through him, what else could she look forward to? Time continued to pass. 10 days had passed since Zhou Xuanji entered Fate Emperor River. However, he still had no idea how far he was from becoming a martial emperor. He could only try his best to become stronger. As for whether he could become a martial monarch or not, it all depended on the will of the heavens. The abnormality of Fate Emperor River attracted the attention of many people who were proficient in divination. There were many lackeys of Sunlight Emperor in the Sun Tomb. Not only did the news spread to Sunlight Emperor, but it also spread to the whole world. In less than half a month, the entire world knew that Zhou Xuanji had become a great emperor in Fate Emperor River. Back when Sunlight Emperor had just discovered Fate Emperor River, the various factions had already scouted out the whereabouts of Fate Emperor River. However, they were not strong enough, so they could only look at the Mountain of Gold. Even with the Heavenly Hall's evil deeds, the conflicts within the human race did not stop. Those in power in the dark could not obtain Fate Emperor River, so they could only use other methods. For a time, the human race was shaken. Achieving the martial monarch realm? The Sword Emperor has already reached such a height? Even the strongest human cultivator fell under his feet. Why can't he become a martial monarch? Our ancestors said that our era is far from the past, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. That's right. Zhou Xuanji will surely shock history. If he succeeded in becoming a martial emperor, wouldn't he be able to expel the Heavenly Hall? Who leaked the news? What evil intentions? To most mortals, Zhou Xuanji becoming a great emperor was not a bad thing, because becoming a great emperor was too far away for them. This was especially so in the current situation. They all hoped that Zhou Xuanji could defeat Spirit Sovereign Yan. The world was in turmoil, and the future of the human race was even harder to predict. The news soon reached Spirit Sovereign Yan's ears. After hearing that Zhou Xuanji wanted to become a great emperor, Spirit Sovereign Yan's first reaction was disdain. He overestimates himself. In this era, no one can become a great emperor because the human race's bloodline is impure. It's impossible for anyone to become a great emperor. Spirit Sovereign Yan sat on his throne and laughed condescendingly. The heavenly guards in the palace also laughed condescendingly. He immediately ordered the 30 heavenly guards to act. They were not to stop Zhou Xuanji but to kill the other people on the hunting list. In his eyes, Zhou Xuanji would definitely die. Once he entered Fate Emperor River, he would not be able to come out alive. However, the other powerful cultivators of the human race did not know about this, and they might try to stop Zhou Xuanji, wanting to monopolize the potential to become a great emperor. This was a good opportunity for him to capture them all at once. After the 30 heavenly guards set off, Spirit Sovereign Yen got up and smiled as he said, "It's time to visit an old friend." After saying this, he disappeared. The remaining heavenly guards looked at each other before leaving. A world-shaking battle was brewing. 1 month later, Xian Xianghua and founding Emperor Qi Wei's expressions became unsightly. "Fortunately, I cast a spell, or else it would have been troublesome," founding Emperor Qi Wei said as he sighed. After Zhou Xuanji entered the river, he had killed everyone in Sun Hill, but he had never thought that the news would still be leaked. Xian Xianghua frowned and said, "We can't go on like this. They will soon discover this place, and we're not sure if we can be disturbed during the process of becoming a great emperor. You need to be prepared to fight to the death." Hearing this, founding Emperor Qi Wei's expression became unsightly. Now, they not only had to face the heroes of the world, but they also had to be wary of the heavenly hall. The pressure was so great that he almost could not breathe. The longer one lived, the more one feared death. Founding Emperor Qi Wei suddenly felt some regret. However, thinking about the old ancestor's words in his dreams, his expression became resolute. "I'll send a message to the Qi Wei Empire and ask for reinforcements," founding Emperor Qi Wei said as he gritted his teeth. If Zhou Xuanji failed to become a great emperor, the human race would definitely perish. Rather than waiting for death, it was better to fight to the death. Xian Xianghua nodded and cast a spell to send the message. At that moment, within Fate Emperor River, Zhou Xuanji felt unprecedented pain. He felt as if he was in a pot of boiling oil, and his body was boiling hot. However, his body was unharmed, which was incredibly strange. So uncomfortable, Zhou Xuanji gritted his teeth. He understood that the true difficulty was coming. As long as he could master World Overlord, he would not fear Spirit Sovereign Yen. If he could become a great emperor, he would not have to fear him. If it wasn't for the Violet Demon Monarch's heart, I might already be dead. Zhou Xuanji felt quite shocked in his heart. He could sense that the Violet Demon Monarch's heart was endlessly sending out energy, nourishing his muscles and bones. Even his body could not withstand the impact of Fate Emperor River. If it was anyone else, they would have died without a doubt. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 378. After rejoicing in his heart, Zhou Xuanji began paying attention to the Violet Demon Monarch's heart in his body. The Violet Demon Monarch's heart had already fused with his heart, and there was no distinction between them. However, all this while, he had been unable to see through the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. At this moment, the Violet Demon Monarch's heart was actually absorbing the fate within Fate Emperor River. It was truly mystical. Where did it come from? What is the origin of the Violet Demon Palace? Zhou Xuanji felt quite curious and wanted to take out the ancient god sword to ask the ancient powerhouses. But he could not take out the divine sword, because the sword spirit had stopped him. According to what the sword spirit had said, if all swords were refined by the heaven and earth fate, then Zhou Xuanji would forever be under the control of the heavenly law. For now, being acknowledged by the heavenly law had only benefits and no disadvantages. But one day, it would become a disadvantage. Because his goal was to surpass the heavenly Tao. Zhou Xuanji could not figure it out, so he stopped thinking about it. He allowed the Violet Demon Monarch's heart to absorb fate while he continued to cultivate World Overlord. He was already very close to becoming a fifth tribulation bodiless immortal. The spiritual energy from the ground surged wildly into his body. With the help of the Tianxia map, his cultivation level skyrocketed. If he stayed like this for a year, even if he could not achieve the martial monarch realm, he would be reborn. 3 days later. It was his 74th birthday. Analyze that the sword owner has reached 74 years old. Gotcha started. Ding. Congratulations, the sword owner has obtained Amethyst, Chaos Breath Sword, Intimidating Spirit, Diamond Heart Suppressing Sword, Gold, Evil Yellow Sword. Then, the information of the 3 swords appeared before his eyes. Sword name, Myriad Chaotic Breath Sword Grade, Amethyst description, the best of the wind sword. It is known for its fierceness and sharpness, capable of tearing everything apart. Sword name, Diamond Heart Suppressing Sword Grade, Intimidating Spirit, description, the sword of the Vajra god. It can calm the soul and give people unparalleled faith. Sword name, Evil Yellow Sword Level, gold description. Legend has it that there are 7 color divine swords in the evil abyss. Each color represents a type of desire, and yellow represents hope. If all 7 divine swords are gathered, they will merge into an ancient demonic sword. After obtaining another intimidating spirit legendary sword, Zhou Xuanji felt quite good. He was interested in the evil yellow sword. At the moment, he already had the evil purple sword, the evil yellow sword, the evil green sword, and the evil crimson sword. He was only 3 colors away from fusing the mysterious ancient demon sword. He wondered how powerful it would be. The 7 swords were only gold ranked, so there was little hope of them surpassing intimidating spirit. However, he was still looking forward to it. What if there was a surprise? After that, he discarded all distracting thoughts and continued to concentrate on his cultivation. At the same time, Sun Hill was filled with people. Countless people were searching for Fate Emperor River. Standing at the top of the mountain, one could see traces of cultivators and demons everywhere within a 500-kilometer radius. From time to time, battles would break out. Fate Emperor River was thousands of meters underground, and ordinary cultivators wouldn't be able to find it. However, there were also quite a number of experts who sneaked underground and searched everywhere. Ka-cha! Xian Xianghua twisted another person's neck, destroyed his soul, and threw his corpse to the side. Dozens of corpses were piled up on the side like a mass grave. Founding Emperor Qi Wei gritted his teeth and said, "If this goes on, we will become more and more passive." Xian Xianghua did not reply. She had already done what she had to do. Now, she could only defend to the death. Founding Emperor Qi Wei said cautiously, "Should I go up and purposely create fake news to lure people away?" Xian Xianghua glanced at him and lightly nodded. He immediately felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders and he dove into the mountain. Soon, he left the ground and flew above the forest. When he looked around, he could not help but feel quite shocked. He had guessed that there would be many people coming, but he had never thought that there would be so many. Do they all want to die? Instead of dealing with the heavenly hall, they only know how to fight amongst themselves. Founding Emperor Qi Wei cursed inwardly, but he could understand what they were thinking. If he was 5,000 years younger, he would most likely be like these people and go crazy for becoming a great emperor. After all, there were many ancient records stating that anyone who entered Fate Emperor River could become a great emperor. Even though it was not true, it was enough to make people go crazy. He immediately flew into the air and circulated his magic energy as he shouted, "I've found Zhou Xuanji and Fate Emperor River. Hurry and come with me. Fate Emperor River is about to run dry." His voice was like thunder, causing countless humans and demons to turn around. Even the 30 heavenly guards hiding in the forest turned around. Founding Emperor Qi Wei turned and flew away, and seeing this, the others did not have time to think and hurriedly followed. Fate Emperor River is about to run dry. That fellow looks so familiar. Isn't he the founding ancestor of the Qi Wei Empire? He's indeed still alive. Fudge. Zhou Xuanji absorbed it so quickly. Commotion filled the heavens and earth, and founding Emperor Qi Wei looked incredibly worried. His eyes were filled with drama, and it was difficult to tell what was real and what was fake. Countless cultivators and demons majestically flew away with founding Emperor Qi Wei, but there were still a few people searching in this region. In the distance, on a cliff, Feng Qiu, who had lost his left arm, looked at this scene and could not help but gulp. Biyao Yisan stood by his side and shook his head as he sighed and said, "This is too crazy. Everyone in the world is an idiot, and Zhou Xuanji is also an idiot." Feng Qiu asked in confusion, "Why?" There was a hint of bitterness in his eyes. He felt that he would be conned to death by Biyao Yisan. Fudge. Every time, this bastard would confidently say that he was invincible, and then he would be beaten like a dog. Every time, he would self-destruct, and this time, he had even lost an arm, making him feel quite resentful. 20,000 years ago, there was a ferocious person who stole the human race's fate and became the sole emperor. This caused his descendants to bear karma and their bloodlines to become impure. They will never be acknowledged by heavenly law and will never be able to become a great emperor. Biyao Isin said faintly before pausing and sighing, in actuality, many geniuses have been born in the past 20,000 years, and they were not any weaker than the great emperors of the past. It's a pity that they were unable to fight against fate, and they all turned to dust and disappeared from the world. Feng Qiu frowned and asked, then how did the hegemon sword emperor become a great emperor? Biyao Isin gave a mysterious smile and said, you'll have to ask him. Feng Qiu almost coughed up blood. If he could ask him, why would he follow a scammer like you? He did his best to calm his emotions. Facing Biyao Isin, no matter how much resentment he felt, he did not dare to show it. That's right, who is that ferocious person you were talking about? Feng Qiu asked out of curiosity. To be able to steal the human race's fate, he was definitely an incredible person. Biyao Isin shook his head and did not reply. Feng Qiu almost jumped up and slapped him. At that moment, Biyao Isin suddenly laughed and said, this emperor has found Fate Emperor River. After saying this, his body blurred and he dived underground. Feng Qiu hurriedly followed. Underground. Xian Xianghua stood by the riverside and looked down at Fate Emperor River. She could not see Zhou Xuanji's figure, so she did not know how he was doing. She suddenly turned and slapped out with her palm. There was a loud bang. Biyao Isin was blasted into a mountain by the palm wind, and Feng Qiu, who had just appeared, was given a big fright. My invincible great emperor, are you going to kneel again? He turned and looked over, and his pupils constricted as he said in a low voice, Xian Xianghua, why are you here? After asking this question, he wanted to slap himself. After spending so much time with Biyao Isin, he had become stupid. This old demonic woman was definitely here to protect Zhou Xuanji. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 379. Since you're here, don't even think about leaving. Xian Xianghua's eyes were cold, and her words were filled with extreme killing intent. Feng Qiu hurriedly waved his hand and said, we're not here to take Fate Emperor River. Biyao Isin landed on the ground and dusted off his clothes as he looked at Xian Xianghua. He brushed aside the hair on his forehead and smiled as he said, this beauty is quite powerful. Don't worry, we're here to stop Spirit Sovereign Yen. We're not interested in Fate Emperor River. Feng Qiu reminded in a low voice, she's Zhou Xuanji's old lover. Hearing this, Biyao Isin's face instantly became green. He felt disgusted. When he looked at Xian Xianghua again, he found her to be an eyesore. He harumphed coldly and said, this emperor wants to ambush Spirit Sovereign Yen here, so I advise you not to obstruct me. Otherwise, this emperor will self-detonate and you will die, along with that little slut in the river. Whenever Zhou Xuanji was mentioned, he became angry. At the same time, he inwardly cursed that such a perfect and powerful beauty had been taken by Zhou Xuanji. The heavens were so unfair. Xian Xianghua narrowed her eyes and said, you are the great Emperor Heartless who has been defeated in every battle? Biyao Isin felt like his heart was being stabbed, and he almost coughed up blood. Defeat after defeat? He was instantly enraged and prepared to teach Xian Xianghua a lesson, but he was stopped by Feng Qiu. Xian Xianghua, now is not the time to fight. Do you think that you alone can stop the people outside? Other than the people of the world, the 30 great tribulation bodiless immortals of the heavenly palace are also hiding. Feng Qiu said in a low voice, feeling quite good in his heart. Finally, there was someone who could rebuke this dog. Xian Xianghua asked, how are you going to ambush us? Didn't you already lose to Spirit Sovereign Yen once? Biyao Isin was stabbed once again, and his heart felt great pain. Feng Qiu glanced at him, feeling quite pleased inwardly, but on the surface, he said seriously, "At least we injured Spirit Sovereign Yen. We plan to set up a barrier here, and once Spirit Sovereign Yen steps in, he will be trapped here for a short period of time." Xian Xianghua frowned. What kind of lousy idea was this? Biyao Yisan said unhappily, "Don't worry, he won't dare to enter Fate Emperor River, nor will he be able to destroy Fate Emperor River. As long as we can trap him here, this emperor will be able to self-detonate at close range. His soul will be destroyed, and even true gods will not be able to save him." Xian Xianghua asked, "Then how should we escape?" Hearing this, Feng Qiu's liver ached. He had already been injured twice, and he didn't want to experience it again. Biyao Yisan said proudly, "That will depend on your own strength." Feng Qiu suddenly had a strong urge to rebel. Xian Xianghua did not agree and sank into hesitation. Biyao Yisan was not in a hurry. After all, Spirit Sovereign Yen had not come yet. Juadi Cliff. Spirit Sovereign Yen and Dugu stood opposite each other in the valley. "What do you think? Isn't it good to have you become the Eternal Lord? This is your chance to turn things around." Spirit Sovereign Yen said, his tone filled with desire. Although the person in front of him was only a remnant soul, his strength had shocked the upper realm. Even the Lord of the Heavenly Palace coveted him. Dugu frowned and said, "What exactly do you want? I'm afraid the Heavenly Palace doesn't know about this." Spirit Sovereign Yen nodded and raised the corners of his lips, revealing an unruly smile. "The Heavenly Palace has decayed. I'm powerful enough, but I can only be a spirit sovereign. My son has unparalleled talent, but because he offended the Heavenly Palace's crown prince, he was banished to the mortal realm." Although he spoke arrogantly, his gaze was fixed on Dugu. Dugu did not reply immediately and continued to frown, weighing the pros and cons. Spirit Sovereign Yen turned and looked at the sky as he said, "Devil Emperor Dugu, you are a rare genius in the mortal realm. You are not weaker than Lu Wuji, and your death is regrettable. Are you really willing to leave this vast chessboard just like that?" Devil Emperor Dugu. The peerless genius from 50,000 years ago. Before he became a great emperor, he defeated Lu Wuji's body. Back then, Lu Wuji slaughtered countless living beings and absorbed countless essence qi. His cultivation surpassed seventh tribulation scattered immortal, but he was still defeated by him. Back then, he was the current Zhou Xuanji. He was still in his prime, and he was still invincible. After so many years, he was only left with a remnant soul in this forbidden ground, struggling at death's door. Wasn't this pitiful? Dugu remained silent. Spirit Sovereign Yen was not in a hurry and waited for him to make a decision. His target had never been Zhou Xuanji or Biyao Yisan. He wanted more, and his desires were greater. "Very well," Dugu said in a low voice. His eyes flashed, and his demonic qi swayed. Spirit Sovereign Yen gave a smile and loudly laughed. Within Fate Emperor River, Zhou Xuanji did not know what was happening outside. He was completely focused on becoming world overlord. The power of the heavens and earth was his own power. The vastness of the heavens and earth was the vastness of the heart. The goodness of the heavens and earth was the goodness of the spirit. Zhou Xuanji entered a state of enlightenment, and the violet Tai Chi diagram on his forehead gave off a brilliant light. Boom! The spiritual energy surging from the ground suddenly exploded. He was breaking through. Not only was his cultivation breaking through, but his energy technique was also breaking through. The entire Fate Emperor River violently roiled, causing Xian Xianghua and the others to look over. How is this possible? Biyao Yisan's eyes widened as he cried out in shock, "He's not dead yet?" Feng Qiu frowned and could not help but hold his forehead. As expected, this dog had slapped his own face again. Xian Xianghua was not excited, but her eyes were filled with anticipation. She truly hoped that Zhou Xuanji could succeed in becoming a great emperor. Even though the two of them had never formally shared their feelings, she knew that he had her in his heart. They had a tacit understanding, and their feelings were both in each other's hearts. Rumble, at that moment, the underground space violently trembled as if it was going to collapse. Biyao suddenly looked up and muttered, "Those bastards still found this place." Xian Xianghua frowned and demonic chi flowed out, forming a heavenly demon image, looking savage and terrifying. On land, within a mountain forest, founding Emperor Qi Wei was surrounded by 30 heavenly guards. His body was covered with blood, and he breathed raggedly. There were people all around him, and all of the cultivators and demons coldly watched on. They were densely packed, and they were like an inescapable net, surrounding him from above and below. Founding Emperor Qi Wei wiped away the blood at his mouth and said coldly, "The Heavenly Hall wants to destroy our human race, yet you're colluding with them for Fate Emperor River. Don't you find this laughable?" His voice was loud and clear, causing many cultivators' eyes to flicker. Who did not fear the Heavenly Hall? It was because they were afraid that they wanted to become a great emperor. Only when they were powerful would they feel safe. The heavenly guard in the lead was 15 meters tall and held 2 axes. He wore diamond-like armor and looked sharp and shiny. He looked at founding Emperor Qi Wei with his tiger-like eyes and said disdainfully, "Mortal, gods will not kill everyone in the world, they will only kill those who resist. You are someone who must die. Tell me where Fate Emperor River is, and I will let you die a quick death. Otherwise, I will rip out your soul and let you experience heavenly punishment." The other heavenly guards mocked him. A second tribulation scattered immortal dared to toy with them? Founding Emperor Qi Wei deeply breathed in, and his gaze became resolute. Underground. Within Fate Emperor River, Zhou Xuanji broke through to 5th tribulation scattered immortal. At the same time, he comprehended the 5th level of the World Buddha art, World Overlord. His magic energy greatly increased, and it turned from a small stream into a river into a river, and a river into a vast ocean. 2 consecutive updates, a new month, asking for monthly votes. I want to give it my all and update more. Everyone, please vote more to help me. Since the year before last, I have been trying to qualify for the Great God Pact. I did not succeed the year before, but I became one of the 12 heavenly kings. Last year, because I did not want to leave the plot unfinished, I finished the most powerful mythical emperor and started a new book. With Emperor starting point, I created an average of 20,000 votes. Investiture as a xianxia was not a problem, but it was a pity that I ended it halfway. The new book was not as good as I expected, and the total number of votes for both was only around 6,000. I did not succeed in applying for the Great God Pact. Of course, I did not want to give up, but writing was the most important. This year, I hope that I can get one. Currently, the total number of votes for Legendary Sword starting point and creation point is almost 8,000. The book has only just begun, and we cannot remain silent. Just like how Zhou Xuanji was about to become a great emperor, everyone was helping each other. I will update, you will vote, and we will work hard together. Cast more monthly votes to save the child. Come. Wonderful book house. Come. Chapter 380. World Overlord. Zhou Xuanji finally mastered it. In that instant, he felt that his soul was being refined. His divine sense suddenly left his body and left Fate Emperor River. He saw Xian Xianghua, Biyao and Feng Qiu. His divine sense continued to soar, leaving the ground. He saw countless humans and demons gathered in the wilderness. He saw founding Emperor Qi Wei being surrounded and attacked by a group of heavenly guards like a dog being toyed with. Zhou Xuanji's divine sense leaped past them and saw majestic mountains and rivers. The land was quickly shrinking. He saw a boundless azure ocean. The clouds were layered, and the sun and moon were beside him. The heavens and earth shrunk in his eyes until he reached the highest point in the sky and looked down at the entire world. Is this the stage of World Overlord? Zhou Xuanji muttered to himself. He had the confidence to control everything. Perhaps this was how the immortal gods viewed the mortal realm. Apart from this, he could sense that there was a formless energy around him that could be controlled by him. He closed his eyes and began to comprehend. He ignored everything that he had seen before. His consciousness did not notice how dangerous his situation was, and he only took a quick glance. His mind was occupied by the vastness of the heavens and earth. The power of the heavens and earth was his power. At the same time, in Fate Emperor River, his body madly absorbed fate and spirit chi. The violet Tai Chi diagram on his forehead gave off waves of faint images, causing the entire Fate Emperor River to glow with a violet light. This is, Xian Xianghua's eyes widened in awe. Biyao Yisan was completely dumbfounded and mumbled, "Impossible. Impossible, mortals who entered Fate Emperor River would die without a doubt. Unless Zhou Xuanji came from 20,000 years ago." Wait. Cold sweat beaded on his forehead. Thinking back to Zhou Xuanji's devilish deeds, he wondered if he really came from 20,000 years ago. From what he knew, no one was more devilish than Zhou Xuanji. He had reached fourth tribulation scattered immortal cultivation before he was 80 years old and could even kill Lu Wuji. Even the performance of the previous powerhouses at the same time paled in comparison to Zhou Xuanji. So it's like this. Biyao Yisan was covered in cold sweat and suddenly felt some lingering fear. Fortunately, he had not completely fallen out with Zhou Xuanji. Feng Qiu noticed the change in his expression and felt a wave of regret. If he knew this, he would have fought with Dao Seeker for Zhou Xuanji even if he had to risk his life. Sigh. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. The three of them each had their own thoughts as they stared at Fate Emperor River. A loud bang resounded. The cavern wall above them suddenly collapsed, startling the three of them and forcing them to take cover. The entire underground space crazily collapsed. The soil and rocks were squeezed against each other, moving to both sides and downwards. It was as if a world-destroying force was descending, compressing the earth. Fate Emperor River was battered by the mud and rocks, but it was not affected at all. Anything that got close to it would immediately turn into ashes. Looking up from the ground, one could see a heavenly guard with a pair of axes standing in the sky, looking down. The land within a radius of 100 miles had collapsed as if a hole had appeared in the ground, causing the soil and trees to sink. There were also many cultivators and monsters mixed in with the collapse. They screamed miserably, turning Sun Hill into a purgatory on earth. Not far away, founding Emperor Qi Wei, who had lost his arms and legs, was bound by iron chains. His entire body was dripping with blood, and he was being watched over by two heavenly guards. His eyes were filled with despair as he stared at the destructive power of the Twin Axe's heavenly sentinels. He was too strong. He was almost invincible. He sighed inwardly, "It's over, the human race is completely finished." In the distance, many cultivators and monsters were floating in the air. Their bodies stiffened as they looked at the scene in shock. What kind of power was this? They felt helpless. How could mortals like them resist such powerful heavenly guards? Fate Emperor River? They would not dare to snatch it even if they had 10 guts. Do you see this? This is the power of a god. You can only have a chance to live if you submit obediently. The Twin Axe's heavenly sentinel laughed maniacally. His name was Yang Lu, and he was Spirit Sovereign Yan's most powerful subordinate. He was an 8th tribulation scattered immortal. 8th tribulation scattered immortal. Even the most powerful human in the history of the northern wilderness region had never reached such a cultivation. Even Lu Wuji was only a 7th tribulation scattered immortal when he ascended. He was different from ordinary heavenly sentinels. He had a strong background in the upper realm, and because he worshipped Ji Xian, he became Spirit Sovereign Yan's subordinate. His ambition was the same as Spirit Sovereign Yan's, and he wanted to revive Ji Xian and see him return to the peak. He suddenly understood why so many powerful people chose to descend to the mortal world. This feeling of destroying the weak was simply too satisfying. His unbridled laughter covered the screams below. Soon, a horrifying crater that was thousands of meters deep and hundreds of miles wide appeared. Fate Emperor River also appeared at the bottom of the crater. It flowed out of the soil like a torrent of mist, and then disappeared into the soil in front of it. However, the soil on both sides did not feel wet at all. Yang Lu's gaze was fixed on Fate Emperor River, and his smile became disdainful. Founding Emperor Qi Wei's face was ashen. He did not see Xian Xianghua, and thought that she had escaped. Your sword emperor is down there. Watch how I kill him. Yang Lu raised his battle axe and laughed loudly. No one responded. They were all trembling in fear and despair. Stop. At this moment, a domineering shout was heard. Everyone turned around and saw Jiang Wudi flying over from the east with a large group of Jiang clan disciples. Cultivator armies were also rushing over from other directions. There was the Great Zhou, Great Shang, Great Qin, Qi Wei, Hunyuan, Donghan, and Bahan. There was the Dongyuan Monastery, Merciful Melody Cliff, Red Bank Valley, Shanghai Ziggurat, Mountain Abyss Ziggurat, Ice River Valley, Deep Abyss Manor, and 10,000 Swords Divine Mountain. There were also other factions with countless cultivators. 5 million? No. It could be more than 10 million. Most of the human forces in the northern wilderness region were gathered. All the cultivators stared at the heavenly guards furiously and wanted to tear them into pieces. A bunch of ants. Do you think you can win with numbers? Yang Lu laughed disdainfully. As he spoke, he swung his axe forcefully. The domineering axe chi descended like a crescent moon and blasted into Fate Emperor River. This scene made everyone's eyes red. Zhou Xuanji was their biggest hope. If he died, how could the human race fight against the heavenly hall? You're seeking death. Jiang Wudi charged at Yang Lu first, and the other powerful cultivators followed suit. They wanted to fight to the death with Yang Lu. At the same time, inside Fate Emperor River, Zhou Xuanji's mind returned to his body. He felt that something bumped into him, but it did not hurt, so he did not care. After comprehending the power of the heavens and earth, his cultivation grew rapidly. In a short while, he broke through to 6 tribulation scattered immortal. His magic energy grew tremendously, and his soul sublimated. Zhou Xuanji was immersed in it and could not extricate himself. The unprecedented power made him want to roar. But because he was in Fate Emperor River, he could not open his mouth. Mortal, you want to prove your Tao? Right at this moment, a solemn voice suddenly exploded in his mind, jolting him awake in an instant. Who's speaking? He opened his eyes wide and thought in astonishment. 3rd chapter. One must have the right attitude to ask for monthly votes. During the double monthly vote period, one would need 1,000 monthly votes and 1 chapter. After the double monthly vote period, one would need 500 monthly votes and 1 chapter. It's different this time. It's not on the basis of the 3rd chapter, but on the basis of the 4th chapter. Is my attitude good? Vote quickly. After writing, I went to bed. Today is Labor Day, and I will not be home during the day. I will update at night when I come back. Happy Labor Day. Calm. Wonderful book house. Calm. Chapter 381. Mortal, you want to prove your Tao? That solemn voice came again. Zhou Xuanji could not find where he came from, and he could not help but frown. This voice reminded him of Shenyuan Zhou. His tone was indifferent, yet it revealed a divine dignity. Even he couldn't help but feel reverence in his heart. Compared to Shenyuan Zhou, this voice sounded more like heaven. Perhaps he was heaven. Mortal, you want to prove your Tao? This was the 3rd time he asked. Zhou Xuanji said in his heart, I want to. He didn't jump into Fate Emperor River to play around. Boom! A bolt from the blue suddenly sounded in Zhou Xuanji's mind. Next, a massive wave of memories flowed into his mind. His body trembled, causing Fate Emperor River to surge violently. The people outside did not notice the abnormality in Fate Emperor River, and they thought it was caused by Yang Lu's attack. At this moment, the world's strongest were besieging Yang Lu. Tens of millions of cultivators surrounded the 29 heavenly guards and unleashed all sorts of spells at them from all directions. Explosions rang out one after another, the wind blew the clouds away and the earth shook. This battle covered the heavens and the earth. It was a magnificent sight. The heavenly guards were powerful, but dozens of them died every second. Their corpses fell like rain. Blood flowed along the walls of the pit to the bottom, forming a river of blood. Founding Emperor Qi Wei lost his guard and fell to the ground, almost falling to his death. He laid at the bottom of the crater and tilted his head to look at Fate Emperor River. He suddenly realized that something was wrong with Fate Emperor River. This ripple lasted for a very long time, as if something was about to charge out of Fate Emperor River. Could it be? His heartbeat quickened, and his eyes revealed a look of anticipation. At this moment, Xian Xianghua appeared beside Fate Emperor River. She stood there proudly, her purple dress fluttering in the wind. She looked up at the invincible Yang Lu and frowned. Biyao Isin and Feng Qiu came to the edge of the crater and watched the battle from atop the trees. Feng Qiu gulped. Tens of millions of cultivators attacking a few dozen people. This was the first time he had seen such a scene. This group of dogs is really impressive. Biyao Isin crossed his arms as he coldly harumphed, his tone filled with disdain. Back then, no matter how many heavenly guards there were, they would all die when facing him. He didn't attack immediately. He was waiting for Spirit Sovereign Yen. Yang Lu waved his axes, and the flames spread out like a sea of fire, instantly burning 6 Mahayana cultivators to death. His flames were extraordinary, and a mortal's body couldn't withstand it at all. His figure flashed and appeared in front of Jiang Wudi. He raised his axe and swung it at him. In an instant, Jiang Wudi sensed fatal danger. He subconsciously turned his body, but his right arm was still chopped off. Your reaction is very fast. Unfortunately, you still have to die. Yang Lu smiled contemptuously. He turned around and kicked Jiang Wudi's chest, causing his body to fall into the sky. Too strong. Number 3 under heaven was completely powerless in front of him. The other peerless experts of the human race were shocked. How could they defeat Yang Lu? Looking at the surrounding battlefield, the other heavenly guards were like tigers that had entered a flock of sheep, mercilessly slaughtering without restraint. If things continued like this, the allied human forces would definitely be defeated. And everyone would die. Rumble, thunder clouds suddenly gathered. Yang Lu raised his right arm high, and countless bolts of lightning fell on his battle axe. It was as if many dragons were entangled in it, struggling crazily. Everyone around him was so scared that they all retreated. A terrifying pressure raged in the sky, and even the other people who were fighting stopped. The heavenly guards panicked and quickly moved away from Yang Lu. Their behavior made the human race even more panicked. Uneasiness, despair, and fear spread. Yang Lu's face was ferocious. Under the light of the lightning, he looked like an evil demon that could destroy the world. Mortals, do you want to see the true power of a god? Once my axe falls, all of you will die. He laughed wildly. Black clouds covered the sky, and he turned the world into purgatory. Hearing this, the cultivators all retreated. Even Li Yinyu, Shitan Changsha, and the others didn't dare to go near him. Damn it, Yang Xindi gritted his teeth. Yang Lu's power made him angry and afraid. He was in despair. Were mortals really powerless against the upper realm? Ha ha ha. Go to hell. Continue to be afraid in hell. Yang Lu laughed maniacally. Just when he finished speaking, he swung his axe down. The apocalyptic lightning struck the ground, causing the entire sky to flicker with lightning. Everyone was engulfed by the lightning as though they were killed by the might of the heavens. Go. Biyao Isin quickly fled with Feng Qiu. Inside Fate Emperor River. Zhou Xuanji was in a mysterious state. He couldn't sense anything in the outside world. Even though Fate Emperor River was rippling violently, he was not affected. After a long while, he opened his eyes slowly. A purple Tai Chi diagram appeared in each of his pupils, which looked demonic and mysterious. He frowned, and waves of shock surged in his heart. The heavenly law told him the path to becoming a great emperor. He needed to defeat 10 powerful cultivators who were qualified to become a great emperor. But the more great emperor candidates he defeated, the more powerful he would be after becoming a great emperor. But how many great emperor candidates were there in the world? Yang Di was one. Did Spirit Sovereign Yen belong to the upper realm count? Biyao Isan had already become a great emperor, so he definitely counted. But even so, he couldn't gather 10. He was furious in his heart and felt that he was being played by the heavenly law. Anti-Sien. At this moment, a scream filled with sorrow and anger came from above, which shocked Zhou Xuanji so much that he looked up immediately. He recognized the owner of the voice immediately. Zhou Xiaoxian. Thunderclouds billowed, causing the heavens and earth to fall into darkness. Countless corpses lay in the gigantic pit that spanned hundreds of miles. Even the forest ruins at the edge had corpses, and there were severed limbs and heads everywhere. Yang Lu was surrounded by lightning and looked down at the land like a thunder god. The 29 heavenly guards gathered around him and smiled condescendingly. Following their gaze, Xian Xianghua was half kneeling beside Fate Emperor River. She was covered in blood, and her hair was a mess. Her purple dress was charred, and her veil was gone. Her beautiful yet cold face was filled with a murderous aura. She stared at Yang Lu and the others. Other than anger, hatred, and murderous intent, there was no fear or despair. Far away, Daoya old man grabbed Zhou Xiaoxuan's arm so that she could not break free. Jiang Shui, Lin Changge, Ning Zifeng, Xiao Jinghong, and the others led hundreds of thousands of Emperor Sword Court's disciples and flew into the sky. They quickly surrounded the 30 heavenly guards. Their hearts were heavy. Everywhere they looked, there were miserable corpses, and the thick smell of blood was so pungent. Yo, another group of insects that don't care about their lives. Yang Lu sneered. His tone was cold, and he did not take Emperor Sword Court seriously at all. He lowered his head to look at Xian Xianghua, and the corners of his mouth curled up as he laughed arrogantly. B*TCH, I see that you are quite pretty. Why don't you become my house pet? As long as you become my dog, I will let you live. The other heavenly guards burst out laughing like demons from hell. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 382. Facing Yang Lu's savagery and brutality, Xian Xianghua did not surrender. She stood up slowly, and the demonic qi behind her condensed into a heavenly demon again. She looked around, and the corpses of the dead made her a little dazed. Back then, the war between the righteous and demonic factions was as tragic as this. Back then, she was fearless and mighty with her demonic might. She did not care about the pitiful people who died in the war. But now, their positions were reversed. She became the weak one, and she could not fight against the arrogant Yang Lu at all. She felt a little sad in her heart. The human race had been fighting among themselves for so many years, but they were still going to be defeated by their enemies. No. There was still hope. She suddenly thought of Zhou Xuanji, and her eyes became determined. The heavenly demon behind her roared into the sky, which made the heavenly guards' mocking laughter even louder. This woman still wants to fight? The northern wilderness region is just so. Let's just kill her. Can't we find a beauty? Huh, such a strong beauty is rare. I really don't know what she's thinking. She's overestimating herself. They ridiculed him wantonly, completely unaware of how cruel their actions were. Yang Lu raised his right arm and raised his axe again. He looked down at Xian Xianghua with disdain. Save Auntie Xian. Zhou Shaoxian struggled with all her might. She was so anxious that she cried. When she was young, although Xian Xianghua only visited her twice, she treated her well and even taught her cultivation. She had always admired Xian Xianghua, the most powerful woman in the world, the former top cultivator in the world. The others looked terrible. But what should they do? Jiang Shui took out her staff and took a deep breath. She was ready to fight. She knew that her cultivation was not high enough, but Zhou Xuanji owed Xian Xianghua too much. Not only that, Xian Xianghua even taught her the celestial devil rebirth technique. No matter if she was Zhou Xuanji's wife or herself, she could not just stand by and watch. What are you doing? Dahlia old man stared at her and reprimanded. Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Zongjian, Han Shenhua, Lin Changge, Ning Zifeng, and the others stood up one after another. They could escape from this battle. But where could they run to? Rumble, at this moment, the crater began to shake violently. Everyone turned to look. Fate Emperor River was twisting violently, as though something was about to burst out. The pebbles and rocks in the huge pit were shaken into the air. It was a spectacular scene. Whoosh! A bolt of lightning struck down like a giant dragon, blasting a huge hole in the wall of the pit. Its destructive power was terrifying to the extreme. That is, founding Emperor Qi Wei, who was lying in the distance, became excited. His breathing quickened and his upper body trembled. Yang Lu frowned and had a bad premonition. He swung his axe at once. Tens of thousands of thunderbolts suddenly fell, causing the world to lose its color. A terrifying explosion resounded. An invisible barrier actually blocked all of the lightning. The scene was spectacular and shocking, causing everyone to be moved. The heavenly guards were even more shocked. They could not believe their eyes. They all subconsciously looked towards Fate Emperor River. A figure slowly rose up from Fate Emperor River. It was Zhou Xuanji. He wore the Trisun Flame Qi robe, and his black hair fluttered in the wind. His face was grave and stern, and a purple Tai Chi diagram appeared on his forehead. His hands hung down naturally, and as soon as he appeared, all living things went silent and the thunder dissipated. He stood on Fate Emperor River and did not give off any might. He was like a mortal, and his aura was almost non-existent, as if he had fused with the heavens and the earth. Everyone's eyes were gathered on him. Zhou Shaoxian, Jiang Shui, Xiao Jinghong, and the others were all excited. He really did not die. The hundreds of thousands of Emperor Sword Court's disciples were so excited that their faces were red. They clenched their fists and tried their best to control their emotions. Zhou Xuanji glanced at the heavenly guards before looking at Xian Xianghua and asked, "Are you okay?" His tone was calm, and no emotions could be heard from him. He had already seen the countless corpses around him, which was enough to tell how intense the battle had been. Xian Xianghua heaved a sigh of relief and sat down with her legs crossed. "If you still didn't come out, I might have really died," she said. She could not see through Zhou Xuanji, and the more he was like this, the more at ease she felt. Zhou Xuanji looked up at the heavenly guards and rose up slowly. The sun-devouring Tiango sword appeared in his hand. Even in the darkness, his sword still shone with a cold radiance. "You are Zhou Xuanji? A sixth tribulation scattered immortal. You are quite powerful," Yang Lu said with squinted eyes. Who else could come out from Fate Emperor River other than Zhou Xuanji? His words surprised Emperor Sword Court and those who were still alive. The Sword Emperor already had the cultivation of a sixth tribulation scattered immortal. Everyone in the northern wilderness region knew that Zhou Xuanji's power could not be measured by cultivation stages. But every time he broke through a stage, his power would grow tremendously. But it's a pity that I have the cultivation of an eighth tribulation scattered immortal. No matter how powerful you are not a match for me. Now, kneel before me and beg me to spare your life. Depending on your performance, I will decide your life and death." Yang Lu laughed savagely and did not take Zhou Xuanji seriously at all. He was a genius too. He could tell that Zhou Xuanji had yet to become a great emperor, so he was not afraid. Zhou Xuanji stopped in the air and caressed the sun-devouring Tiango sword. Although I have yet to become a great emperor, I have broken through. Do you know what stage I have broken through to? Yang Lu laughed condescendingly and deliberately mystified him. He did not ask the heavenly guards to attack but to kill Zhou Xuanji himself. After killing the top cultivator in the world, Spirit Sovereign Yan would surely be happy. When Ji Xian revives, he would surely reward him. If I cannot kill you within 3 moves, I will kill myself here. Zhou Xuanji looked up at Yang Lu and said slowly. His tone was casual, but his eyes were so sharp. With this, the heavenly guards laughed even louder. Is this guy crazy? A 6th tribulation scattered immortal killed an 8th tribulation scattered immortal in 3 moves? Yang Lu was laughing too, but his heart tightened suddenly because he noticed that the hundreds of thousands of Emperor Sword Court's disciples were still looking at Zhou Xuanji passionately, as though they were injected with chicken blood. Could it be that Zhou Xuanji had some tricks up his sleeves? Without a word, he charged toward Zhou Xuanji with his axes in both hands. His speed was extremely fast. It was so fast that everyone's eyes could not keep up with him, including the other 29 heavenly guards. But Zhou Xuanji was even faster. He raised his hand and swung his sword, but no one saw it. In their eyes, he did not even raise his hand. A stream of sword light flashed and disappeared in an instant. Yang Lu's pupils contracted and instinctively wanted to block with his axes. Pish. His head was separated from his body. His head spun rapidly in the air, and blood spurted out from his neck. The scene froze. Everyone's mouth was agape. From their point of view, Zhou Xuanji did not attack, but Yang Lu's head flew off strangely. While they were horrified, they felt a chill down their spines. They had witnessed Yang Lu's prowess with their own eyes. Only 1 out of 10 million cultivators survived, which was enough to show how powerful he was. Zhou Xuanji came up to Yang Lu in one step and grabbed his shoulder. He activated world internalization to absorb his magic energy. Sorry, I overestimated you. 1 slash is enough. Zhou Xuanji stared at Yang Lu's head and laughed coldly. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 383. You. How is this possible? Yang Lu, who only had his head left, stared at Zhou Xuanji furiously. Fear was hidden deep in his eyes. He had sensed Zhou Xuanji's sword chi just now, but it was too fast. It was so fast that he couldn't dodge or block it. They were clearly 2 major realms apart. Why was this happening? He couldn't understand. He wanted to regain control of his body, but he found that he couldn't control it. He couldn't even leave his body even if he wanted to. This was because his soul was in his physical body, and there was only the will of his soul in his head. What are you doing? He screamed in horror. He finally felt the aura of death. Zhou Xuanji pressed down on his shoulder and laughed coldly. I want to kill you. You can beg me now. Depending on your performance, I will decide your life and death. This was said by Yang Lu. Now that Zhou Xuanji returned it to him, it was undoubtedly humiliating him. The heavenly guards in the distance were drenched in cold sweat. They did not dare to act at all. They could not see how powerful Zhou Xuanji was, and they could only feel a chill down their spines. Yang Lu was so angry that he almost exploded, but he could clearly feel his vitality fading away. I was wrong. Please spare my life, he gritted his teeth and said. After saying this, he couldn't help but feel a little dizzy. He had never been so humiliated before. If this matter were to spread to the upper realm, how would he survive? However, Zhou Xuanji did not stop and continued to absorb his magic energy. An 8th tribulation scattered immortal's magic energy was incredibly powerful, and it was enough for his cultivation to improve. Yang Lu was anxious. He could no longer care about his pride and face. I beg you, spare my life. I beg you, just treat me as a dog, don't kill me, I'm willing to be your slave, please let me go this time. Ah. What do you want me to do for you to forgive me? Yang Lu's face was full of fear and despair, screaming at the top of his lungs. Seeing him in such a miserable state, no one sympathized with him. Instead, they felt carefree. Those dead cultivators had also begged Yang Lu to let them live. This guy deserved to die. He should be in even more pain. Soon, Zhou Xuanji absorbed all of Yang Lu's magic energy and destroyed his soul. An eighth tribulation bodiless celestial was killed without any resistance. He turned to look at the other 29 heavenly guards. The heavenly guards were terrified and wanted to escape, but they didn't know how to report back. Spirit Sovereign Yen was more brutal than Yang Lu, and he never showed mercy to his subordinates. Zhou Xuanji took Yang Lu's storage ring and strolled toward the heavenly guards. Father is mighty. Zhou Shaoxian cried out excitedly. Just when she was in despair and indignation because of Xian Xianghua, her father appeared once again and killed his enemies with absolute power. At this moment, her eyes were about to turn into stars. Jiang Shui was also excited, but she didn't make a fuss like Zhou Shaoxian. In her heart, Zhou Xuanji could always turn misfortune into fortune. Hundreds of thousands of Emperor Sword Court's disciples shouted the oath. Using the sword to support the world, using the sword to save the world. Using the sword to support the world, using the sword to save the world. Using the sword to support the world, using the sword to save the world. Their blood boiled and their eyes brimmed with tears. How many times had Zhou Xuanji saved the northern wilderness region? Their patriarch was invincible. He was their undefeatable faith. Zhou Xuanji pointed his sword at the 29 heavenly guards and asked, "Where is Spirit Sovereign Yen?" After realizing World Overlord, he could control the power of the heavens and earth. He could fight in the northern wilderness region without any hindrance. The previous slash was not obstructed by space or spiritual qi. It landed on Yang Lu's body directly. It was so fast that it could not be described with speed. Next, his target was Spirit Sovereign Yen. What was worth mentioning was that although Yang Lu was powerful, he was not a great emperor candidate. Great emperor candidate did not refer to power but to someone who was recognized by the heavenly law. Although Zhou Xuanji received instructions from the heavenly law and knew about the path to becoming a great emperor, he still could not understand what was so special about being a great emperor. We don't know, a heavenly guard replied carefully. With so many heavenly guards around, if Zhou Xuanji wanted to attack, they were confident that they could escape. No matter how powerful Zhou Xuanji was, he could not kill all of them at the same time. Humans had the mentality of luck, and so did other intelligent beings, including those from the upper realm. Zhou Xuanji smiled, and a murderous intent beamed out from his eyes. The heavenly guards' expressions changed drastically. They immediately used all kinds of divine abilities and escaped in different directions. Zhou Xuanji did not pursue them. As long as the heavenly guards were still in the northern wilderness region, they could not escape. He could track their location with the power of the heavens and the earth. He came to Xian Xianghua's back with a flash. He took out the Holy Light Redemption Sword and slashed it lightly on her shoulder to heal her. This scene gave many people a fright. But soon, they realized that Zhou Xuanji did not kill Xian Xianghua. Her aura was also recovering, which was quite miraculous. Emperor Sword Court's disciples, listen up. Clean up the battlefield and check if there are any injured. Bury the dead. Zhou Xuanji instructed loudly as he healed Xian Xianghua. Hundreds of thousands of disciples began to move immediately. Jiang Shui and the others flew toward Zhou Xuanji. They had too many questions to ask. Far away. Baihao Yisan and Feng Qiu stood in the forest, both of them silent. Cold sweat covered Feng Qiu's forehead. His eyes were wide open, and blood veins covered his eyeballs. He could not understand what he had just seen. Has he already become a great emperor? He asked carefully. Other than becoming a great emperor, how else could Zhou Xuanji be so powerful? That was an eighth tribulation scattered immortal. That was a cultivation that even the most powerful human in history could not reach before they ascended. Biyao Yisan said faintly with a complicated look in his eyes, he did not become a great emperor, but he can be called a great emperor candidate. He must have comprehended another powerful energy. Facing Zhou Xuanji, he felt pressured. Once this brat becomes a great emperor, how powerful would he be? At Juadi Cliff. Spirit Sovereign Yen sat on a rock and stared ahead. A ball of demonic chi was surging at the edge of the cliff, which vaguely took the shape of a human. His expression changed suddenly, and he frowned slightly. Yang Lu is dead. It shouldn't be. Could it be because of Fate Emperor River? He mumbled to himself. He was a little confused but did not panic. The difference in power between him and Yang Lu was huge. He could crush Yang Lu with one hand, or else how could the unruly Yang Lu submit to him? At this moment, the demonic chi dispersed. A silhouette landed on the edge of the cliff. It was Dugu. He should be called Devil Emperor Dugu. Devil Emperor Dugu stood tall and straight. Demonic chi wrapped around his body, covering his flesh. His face was pale, and his white hair reached the ground. His eyes were blood red with black pupils. He twisted his neck and sighed in amazement, it feels so good to be reborn. His eyes beamed with brilliance. 50,000 years ago, he dominated the world and was invincible. He became a great emperor and ascended. Because he died in the war in the upper realm, his soul was hidden in Juadi Cliff. After so many years, his ambition was almost extinguished. However, the first thing he did after his rebirth was to revive his ambition. A domineering aura exploded from his body, causing the rocks on the cliff to tremble violently. Spirit Sovereign Yen got up and clapped his hands as he laughed, the world-shaking demon emperor has finally been reborn. It's time for the immortal and mortal realms to feel your anger. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 384. Anger? Why would I be angry? Devil Emperor Dugu glanced at Spirit Sovereign Yen and asked indifferently. Seeing his attitude, Spirit Sovereign Yen was not angry. If you want to take revenge, I'm afraid you'll need to cultivate for a long time, but I have another way. Spirit Sovereign Yen chuckled. Devil Emperor Dugu quickly arrived in front of him, leaving behind a series of afterimages. The two of them were less than half a meter apart. Spirit Sovereign Yan's expression did not change. He was not afraid of Devil Emperor Dugu at all. Devil Emperor Dugu wasn't strong at the moment. Speak. Devil Emperor Dugu stared into his eyes and said faintly. Spirit Sovereign Yen looked excited as he said, I obtained a heavenly law stone by chance, and I can use it to create an invincible army. Heavenly law stone. Devil Emperor Dugu narrowed his eyes and asked, what's the heavenly Tao stone? Is it related to the worldly stone? Spirit Sovereign Yen replied, both of them have similar effects. One contains the power of heavenly law, while the other contains the power of heaven and earth. They are both world creation wonders. Then, he revealed his plan. Devil Emperor Dugu furrowed his brows when he heard this. He stared at Spirit Sovereign Yen and said, you are playing with fire. Spirit Sovereign Yen understood what he meant and said nonchalantly, what's there to be afraid of? Those powerful beings are either dead or unable to descend due to their cultivation. As long as we dominate the northern wilderness region and break away from the heavenly palace's control, we can develop on our own. Who knows, we might even be able to nurture the northern wilderness region into a large world. At that time, you and I will be the lord of the Kiliakosm. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. Even his body began to tremble. Devil Emperor Dugu's brows were still furrowed. Spirit Sovereign Yan's tone changed as he said, I also want to find my son. He was once Grand Master Aoshi's disciple and was banished to the mortal world by the Heavenly Palace. If you can help me find him, I can let him take you as his master. He was trying to rope in Devil Emperor Dugu. Devil Emperor Dugu was surprised. Oh. Grand Master Aoshi? Speaking of Ji Xian, Spirit Sovereign Yen revealed a proud expression. He began to talk about Ji Xian's life. Sun Tomb. Zhou Xuanji and the others stood before Fate Emperor River and started to think about how to deal with it. Founding Emperor Qi Wei's entire body was covered in bandages. Even though he was a second tribulation loose immortal, he couldn't regrow his limbs because he didn't cultivate such a magical technique. He was not like Daoya Old Man, who was weak in combat, but had mastered many life-saving abilities and spells. Let's just bury it here. If we bring Fate Emperor River to Skyfall, it will attract a lot of trouble in the future. Moreover, Fate Emperor River will not disappear unless the Northern Wilderness no longer exists. Fate Emperor River could allow one to become a great emperor. It sounded very powerful, but for the vast majority of people, it was useless. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, since it's like this, let's fill this place up and let Fate Emperor River return underground. He no longer needed Fate Emperor River. He already had the heavenly Tao mark in the depths of his soul. As long as he defeated 10 quasi-emperors, he would be able to become a martial emperor. The others had no objections. For them, becoming a great emperor was an extremely distant goal, almost untouchable. The group flew out of the crater and began to use various spells to fill the crater. Xiao Jinghong flew to Zhou Xuanji's side and said softly, "Revered teacher, Jiang Wudi is severely injured and on the verge of death. Should we save him?" Not only him, Canghai Ziggurat Lord Li Yinyu, Mountain Abyss Ziggurat Lord Xing Junlu, and the other sanctum leaders are still alive. Zhou Xuanji replied calmly, "Of course we must save them." Now, he no longer saw the 8 sanctums and 7 empires as his opponents. The existence of these factions was to ensure the power of the human race, so they must stay. Xiao Jinghong immediately left and passed down the order. At the same time, news of the battle at Sun Tomb spread. Tens of millions of people were killed or injured. The 8 sanctums and 7 empires were all severely injured. The prowess of an 8th tribulation scattered immortal shocked everyone. When the world heard that Zhou Xuanji dashed out from Fate Emperor River, saved Xian Xianghua, and killed an 8th tribulation scattered immortal, their blood boiled. This matter was like a hero's story in an opera, full of twists and turns. Zhou Xuanji consolidated his position as the world's top overlord. At the same time, the world's hatred for Xian Xianghua decreased. At least Xian Xianghua was fighting for the Northern Wilderness region. A few days later, the world began to point their fingers at Yang Di. Why didn't the world's top cultivator, the current Emperor Hunyuan, participate in the battle? Soon, the world was filled with rumors. The Sword Emperor proved himself again. Those who went to Sun Tomb to stop the Sword Emperor from becoming a great emperor deserve to die. Zhou Xuanji is too powerful. He's going to surpass the predecessors. So the way of the sword can be so powerful. When will Spirit Sovereign Yen die? Yang Di is not worthy to be mentioned in the same breath as Zhou Xuanji. Half a month later, Zhou Xuanji flew to Skyfall with hundreds of thousands of Emperor Sword Court disciples. He sent founding Emperor Qi Wei back first. As for the other factions, he could not care so much. It was already good enough for him to treat their injuries. It would be too troublesome to send them back one by one. Hundreds of thousands of disciples traveled across mountains and rivers while practicing their sword techniques. The scene was extremely majestic. After being stimulated by Zhou Xuanji, the disciples began to practice their sword techniques even without his orders. They wanted to be as powerful as their grand teacher, who could kill powerful cultivators from the upper realm with his sword. This day, Zhou Xuanji was teaching his daughter when he heard Dao Seeker's voice. "Meet me for an important matter." Zhou Xuanji heard her and gave his daughter a few reminders before disappearing. The others were not surprised and continued their journey. 100 miles away. Zhou Xuanji and Dao Seeker stood on a cliff. Below them were connected mountains that were shrouded in mist. It was hazy and beautiful like a paradise. This is bad. Spirit Sovereign Yen revived Devil Emperor Dugu, Dao Seeker said with a deep voice. Dao Seeker said in a low voice. He felt a sense of pressure at the mention of Devil Emperor Dugu. He had lived for countless years but had never witnessed Lu Wuji's prowess. But he had witnessed Devil Emperor Dugu's invincible figure, which was unforgettable. Zhou Xuanji did not panic. He knew about Devil Emperor Dugu a long time ago. Without Devil Emperor Dugu's help, he could not have obtained the Tianxia map. He still had a good impression of Devil Emperor Dugu. Of course, if Devil Emperor Dugu wanted to be his enemy, he would not show mercy. Moreover, Devil Emperor Dugu's rebirth was a great help to him. This guy was not a great emperor candidate. He was a true great emperor. Other than that, Spirit Sovereign Yen obtained a heavenly law stone. He's going to use the power of heavenly law to create heavenly law puppets for all the powerhouses in the northern wilderness region. This will be the most terrifying crisis in history. There is no chance of winning. Dao Seeker continued. His countenance turned increasingly grim, and there was even fear in his eyes. Every generation of the northern wilderness region's almighty. It wasn't just the human clan's almighty beings, there were also almighty beings from other races. If Lu Wuji, Emperor Xia, Devil Emperor Dugu, Great Emperor Heartless, and the 9 emperors of the Way of the Sword joined forces, who could stop them? Just thinking about it made his scalp tingle. Zhou Xuanji asked with a frown, "What's a heavenly law puppet?" Dao Seeker explained that every generation of almighties in the northern wilderness region had worked hard to become a great emperor, so they had been branded with the heavenly law imprint. The heavenly law puppets created by Spirit Sovereign Yen were like clones, and they all had the cultivation and strength of their original bodies when they left the northern wilderness region. After Zhou Xuanji understood, he had a strange look on his face. He was just fretting about not having a quasi-emperor to defeat. However, there were too many quasi-emperors and great emperors. Calm. Wonderful bookstore calm. Chapter 385. How many heavenly law puppets are there exactly? Zhou Xuanji asked in a low voice. He cursed in his heart. Just as the first wave subsided, another wave came. Can you let me rest for a while? I'm only 74 years old. How could he endure so much pressure? Dao Seeker sighed and said, I can't think about it. I advise you to hide overseas and ascend as soon as possible. Spread this news to the upper realm. Spirit Sovereign Yan's actions will definitely incur the wrath of the northern wilderness region's past powerhouses. When the time comes, they won't just stand by and watch. Zhou Xuanji frowned deeply. If it were him, he would be displeased to find out that someone had created his own heavenly law puppet. But he was still far from ascending. Moreover, after he ascended, he would be killed by the heavenly palace before he could even meet those powerful beings. After the northern wilderness region's experts ascended, the heavenly palace was the first to receive them. If the northern wilderness region was a dynasty, the heavenly palace would be the dynasty that controlled it. Spirit Sovereign Yen is currently at Juadi Cliff. It's best if you take a detour on your way back. I'll be heading overseas to fight for a chance of survival for the human race. Dao Seeker said solemnly with a gloomy expression. Remember, don't go looking for Spirit Sovereign Yen. You are indeed very strong, but he has many unparalleled experts under him. Don't go looking for your death. After saying that, Dao Seeker left in a hurry. Zhou Xuanji pondered on the spot and began to recall historical records. The Xia Emperor, who had led the human race to become the hegemon of the universe. The strongest of the human race, Lu Wuji. He was a noble who could shake mountains and rivers and almost exterminate the demon race. The unparalleled demon emperor of the demon race, the great emperor Wuwang who had once enslaved the human race. Wait a minute. There were too many legendary existences that gave him a headache just thinking about it. He shook his head and returned to Emperor Sword Court's group. He gathered all his trusted aides and walked at the very front. He softly told them about this matter. What? Really? Northern Sword Valiant widened his eyes and exclaimed. He looked as if he had seen a ghost. In the next second, he hurriedly covered his mouth, afraid that the disciples would hear. Daoya old man's face was ashen, and he muttered, "It's over, it's all over." The others were also frightened. Zhou Xuanji was powerful indeed, but to those heavenly law puppets, he was just a junior. People were always in awe of their ancestors, especially those who were legendary. Furthermore, they were not facing just one ancestor, but all of them. Even someone as proud as Xian Xianghua fell silent. Should we tell the world about this and gather the power of the world? Huang Lianxin asked hesitantly. Such a calamity should not be shouldered by Emperor Sword Court alone, much less by Zhou Xuanji. There was no chance of winning this round. Jiang Shui shook her head and said, "Currently, both humans and demons have suffered great losses. Not to mention Spirit Sovereign Yen and his heavenly law puppet army. Even that eighth tribulation scattered immortal heavenly guard is enough to overturn the world." It was no exaggeration to say that Zhou Xuanji was already the most outstanding person in the world. If not for him, the northern wilderness region's human race might have already perished. Zhou Xiaoxian grabbed Zhou Xuanji's arm tightly and said, "Father, don't be reckless." She was no longer a child and understood the seriousness of the matter. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and did not say anything. He would not retreat from this battle. It was not only for the sake of achieving the martial monarch realm, but also for the sake of protecting the people around him. The more time passed, the more heavenly law puppets there would be. Why don't I ascend now and pass on this matter? Xian Xianghua muttered. In the past, she did not bother to ask for reinforcements, but the situation was different now. The enemy was unprecedentedly powerful. Just like what Dao Seeker said, other than this method, they would surely lose. No, the Heavenly Hall wants to kill you too. Aren't you courting death? Zhou Xuanji rejected decisively before looking at everyone. He said meaningfully, "Everyone, the northern wilderness region is facing more and more calamities. There is not much time left for you. Cultivate well. You all return to Skyfall and focus on your cultivation. I will go to Juadi Cliff alone. If I cannot defeat them, I will retreat. With my current power, no one can stop me if I want to escape. Maybe Spirit Sovereign Yen has not created too many heavenly law puppets. We still have a chance." Everyone heard him and fell silent. They wanted to stop him, but they were in no position to do so. Zhou Xiaoxian was anxious and wanted to speak, but Zhou Xuanji covered her mouth. He looked at Jiang Shui and said with a smile, "Take good care of this girl. Don't run out again. I don't want to be surrounded by enemies and have to think of a way to save her." Zhou Xiaoxian stopped struggling. Even her ears were blushing. Jiang Shui nodded and said with a smile, "I believe you." She did not just believe that he could come back alive. Zhou Xuanji immediately turned into a stream of sword light and left. Lin Chang'e clenched his fists and cursed, "It's all my fault. I'm too weak. Master has to fight alone every time." Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Zongjian, Ning Zifeng, Han Shenhua, Chongming Demon Monarch, and the others looked terrible too. The little black snake lay on Ah Big's head and sighed, "Seems like I need to work hard too." Daoya old man sighed and did not speak further. He looked toward the direction where Zhou Xuanji left, and his eyes became determined. At Juadi Cliff. Devil Emperor Dugus sat by the cliff and cultivated. Spirit Sovereign Yen stood on a giant boulder not far away. He raised a boulder that was radiating with rainbow radiance in his right hand. Thunderclouds billowed, mesmerizing the heavens and earth. Around the giant boulder were 5 silhouettes of different shapes and sizes. Each of them was emanating a horrifying aura. Boom! A bolt of lightning landed and turned into a silhouette. It landed beside the giant boulder and stood there quietly. These were all heavenly law puppets. Spirit Sovereign Yen looked down at the newly created heavenly law puppets and praised, finally, a great emperor. Marquis, I didn't expect you to work for me one day. Marquis. Devil Emperor Dugu opened his eyes and looked a little shocked. Marquis' silhouette was domineering. Even though he did not speak or move, he was still emanating a domineering aura of invincibility. Thousands of waves ripple across the ages. Marquis' divine might since ancient times. Devil Emperor Dugu mumbled to himself. He stared at Marquis with a passionate gaze. He had always been eager to battle against such a great emperor. It was a pity that after he ascended, Marquis was still as dazzling as ever. He died before he could reach the height to fight against Marquis. It was such a pity. Spirit Sovereign Yen laughed heartily. He was in a good mood. At this moment, an ear-piercing sound came from afar. Biyao Isin, who was wearing silver armor, charged over with his spear. Spirit Sovereign Yen. He said coldly with a stern expression, I finally found you. This emperor has finally found you. Today, only one of us can survive. After witnessing Zhou Xuanji's prowess, he felt that Spirit Sovereign Yen might not be a match for Zhou Xuanji. He had to avenge his humiliation before Zhou Xuanji attacked. Spirit Sovereign Yen glanced at him and smiled disdainfully. Another bolt of lightning landed and turned into the heavenly law puppets. Biyao Isin stopped and looked at the 7 heavenly law puppets with a frown. Soon, his eyes locked onto Marquis, and his expression changed drastically. Even though Marquis was only a silhouette, he could not forget that silhouette. When Marquis ascended, he became famous. At that time, who did not revere Marquis' domineering aura? He was one of them. He immediately thought of many things and had a bad premonition. Without a word, he raised his arms and roared furiously, Die! Spirit Sovereign Yan's expression changed. This dog is using this move again? Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 386. Please enter the text. Zhou Xuanji hurried toward Juadi Cliff. The closer he got to Juadi Cliff, the more uneasy he felt. He had mastered World Overlord and could sense the heaven and earth. The crisis of the world had arrived, and it was getting more and more intense. According to his speed, he would arrive at Juadi Cliff in half a day. Originally, he could borrow the power of heaven and earth to directly teleport over, but that would consume too much energy, and it would be easy for him to fall into a situation where he would be attacked from both sides. Today, I will use the power of the heavens to revive the past generations of almighty beings, and together, we will create a new era in the northern wilderness region. The fate of the human race has come to an end, and if you want to live on, you can become slaves. A new main character of the world will be born, and each clan can fight for it. As long as you find me and prove your strength, you will all have the chance to become the main character of the world. Spirit Sovereign Yan's voice suddenly resounded throughout the entire northern wilderness region. Zhou Xuanji frowned. Such a vicious plan. This was to lure the overseas races into the northern wilderness region. His evil intentions should be punished. Zhou Xuanji sped up again. However, Spirit Sovereign Yan had yet to finish his words. I've already awakened King Ho. Next, I'll awaken Emperor Xia, Lu Wuji, Hegemon Sword Emperor, Wang Xiaofei, Shi Shenzong, Great Emperor Wu Wang, Buddha Ghost Emperor, and many others. I'll use the power of the heavens to awaken all of the experts who have the qualifications to become great emperors. Great Emperor Heartless tried to stop me but was suppressed by me. Let me give you a word of advice. The will of God is not something you can stop. These words shocked the world. All the experts who have the qualifications to become emperors will be awakened? How could this be? The first reaction of all living beings in the world was disbelief. However, when they thought of how omnipotent immortals and gods were, they were terrified. Even the invincible great Emperor Heartless 90,000 years ago was no match for him, let alone the people of the present. Lu Wuji, who had wreaked havoc in the northern wilderness region, had been resurrected. Would the Sword Emperor be able to block so many experts by himself? For a moment, the world was in chaos. The crisis of the apocalypse made people crazy. Zhou Xuanji was shocked in his heart. He did not expect Spirit Sovereign Yan to have already created a noble heavenly law puppet. No one could say for sure how powerful a noble was. However, the Marquises could definitely be ranked in the top 10 in history when it came to the ability to suppress and rule an era. Even Daoya Old Man held Marquis in high esteem, claiming that Marquis was the most domineering existence among the ancestors of the human race. It was only because the era was different. If he had been born in the era of Emperor Xia, his historical status would definitely not be lower than Emperor Xia's. Of course, it was meaningless to talk about what-ifs. Zhou Xuanji took out the ancient god's sword, and as he advanced, he summoned the 9 souls. He told them about Spirit Sovereign Yan's actions. Emperor Zhao was the first to curse. This kid is playing with fire. Every expert had their own pride. If those almighty existences who were still alive found out that they had become heavenly law puppets, how angry would they be? The higher one's cultivation was, the more they cared about their reputation. The heavenly palace, huh? Such a force is indeed full of villains. Fortunately, it's only the northern wilderness region. What do you mean, lucky? Wang Ho, Emperor Xia, Lu Wuji, Great Emperor Wu Wang, and Buddha Ghost Emperor. Who could stand against the 5 of them? It's not just them. There might be even more ancient existences. Devil Emperor Dugu is also supporting that brat from the Sky Palace. The souls of the almighty existences began discussing. They were not all from the northern wilderness region, but they understood how powerful this tribulation was. Countless years had passed, and the northern wilderness region had produced too many peerless cultivators. If these people formed an army, they could dominate all the mortal realms. Sovereign Xian, who had been silent, said, "The heavenly law stone cannot be used indefinitely. Using the heavenly law's power will be greatly depleted. We can still make it if we rush over now." Emperor Hanlon said, "You are already a great emperor candidate. To you, this is a serendipity. But it's more of a disaster than a blessing." Zhou Xuanji nodded and continued to ask them which powerful cultivators were worth paying attention to. At Juadi Cliff, Biyao Isin was pinned to a stone stele. His limbs were pierced by metal nails, and his neck and waist were bound by metal chains. He could not move at all. There was still a trace of blood at the corner of his lips. Looking at the 15 figures in front of him, his expression was extremely grim. He turned to look at Devil Emperor Dugu, who was cultivating, and said, "Hey, Dugu brat, are you really going to help a nobody like this?" In the upper realm, Spirit Sovereign Yan was indeed a nobody. Having heard that, Spirit Sovereign Yan was indifferent. He had already blocked Biyao Isin. Devil Emperor Dugu opened his eyes and looked at Biyao Isin. Where there is a will, there is a will. Don't underestimate any nobody. Great Emperor Heartless, since you came to the lower realm, how many nobodies have you been forced to self-destruct? Biyao Isin heard this, and his expression changed as though he had eaten a fly. He wanted to retort, but he did not know how. Boom! Another bolt of lightning struck. It was another heavenly law puppet. Biyao Isin glanced over, and his expression changed drastically. Lu Wuji. The heavenly law puppet represented the cultivation and power of the original Lu Wuji before his ascension. This meant that this Lu Wuji was much more powerful than the previous Lu Wuji's corpse. Because he possessed all the divine abilities and battle experience of Lu Wuji before his ascension. Seeing Lu Wuji's arrival, Spirit Sovereign Yan smiled. Devil Emperor Dugu glanced at Lu Wuji thoughtfully. They did not notice that Marquis tilted his head slightly, as though he was looking at Lu Wuji. All the heavenly law puppets were motionless. Even though they were emanating powerful auras, they were still like wooden pillars. Oi, kid, are you absolutely confident that these heavenly law puppets will listen to you? Biyao Isin asked Spirit Sovereign Yen suddenly. Spirit Sovereign Yen had already told him about the heavenly law stone, so he naturally wanted to rope him in. Although Great Emperor Heartless was in such a sorry state, Spirit Sovereign Yen knew how arrogant this guy was in the upper realm. Of course. The heavenly law stone is in my hands, so they will definitely listen to me, Spirit Sovereign Yen said proudly. Having heard this, Biyao Isin squinted his eyes. At this moment, Spirit Sovereign Yen smiled proudly and said, "Did you find a way?" He suddenly put the heavenly law stone into his mouth. Next, his body gave off a rainbow radiance as he turned into the heavenly law stone. Biyao Isin almost cursed out loud. So shameless. Devil Emperor Dugu was speechless. Swoosh, an air-piercing sound came. The three turned around and saw Zhou Xuanji flying over on his sword with a powerful aura. Seeing him, Biyao Isin was pleasantly surprised and cried out, "Brat Zhou, save this emperor. This emperor owes you a favor in the future." "You are Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji?" Spirit Sovereign Yen said with a disdainful smile. The 16 heavenly law puppets turned to look at Zhou Xuanji. All of them unleashed their auras, which shook the clouds and shook the mountains within a radius of 100 miles. Zhou Xuanji stopped 100 meters away from them. He immediately saw Lu Wuji's heavenly law puppet. Very powerful. Even though he had already mastered World Overlord, he still sensed a trace of danger. Devil Emperor Dugu looked up at him and said, "Zhou Xuanji, give up. No matter how powerful you are, you can't turn the tables now. Why don't we work together?" Spirit Sovereign Yen did not speak. Zhou Xuanji's talent and righteousness made him wary. Such a genius must be eliminated. But he had to give Devil Emperor Dugu some face. "If I give up, will you spare the northern wilderness region's humans?" Zhou Xuanji asked calmly. He was curious. Since Spirit Sovereign Yen wanted to betray the Heavenly Hall, why must he eradicate the humans? You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.